kuikan Hilo parang Munday you his plan He's got a Roger cigarette Haji got his monk He's a cocky Jachifon si chodergon And he that is closet in a box of funding Andoni vino wakat But he's coming for you Yeah, he's coming for you Other king Gida pampana kitu veteran Antro my gong And the other king Gida pampana kitu veteran Faster than my ballet And the other king Gida pampana kitu veteran Antro my gong And the other king Gida pampana kitu veteran Faster than my ballet Robert Gota kuikan Hilo parang he do his plan He's got a Roger cigarette Haji got his monk He's a cobot Jachifon si chodergon And he that is closet in a box of funding Andoni vino wakat But he's coming for you Yeah, he's coming for you And the other king Para kitu veteran Antro my gong And the other king Gida pampana kitu veteran Faster than my ballet And the other king Gida pampana kitu veteran Antro my gong And the other king Gida pampana kitu veteran Hiding like six. Let's go! Yeah, yeah! Gota cuincan Kilo garón de un que guante el yuji blanc Is gota role cigarret Allí gojimon Is a toga chifon si chotergon Y gira di closet In a boss of funding Andoni bono a hat Pa que come fuyu Al the other kid Idan pa para kid You bederan Outro macon Al the other kid Idan pa para kid You bederan Al the other kid Idan pa para kid You bederan Outro macon Al the other kid Idan pa para kid You bederan Como vale Kilo garón de un que guante el yuji blanc Is gota role cigarret Allí gojimon Is a toga chifon si chotergon Y gira di closet In a boss of funding Andoni bono a hat Pa que come fuyu Yeah, he come for you idam para kid, you better rang. Outro my gun, and the other kid, idam para kid, you better rang. Faster than my man, and the other kid, idam para kid, you better rang. Outro my gun, and the other kid, idam para kid, you better rang. Faster than my man. I love the whole world. All the other kids, idam para kid, you better run. Outro my gun. All the other kids, idam para kid, you better run. Faster than my man. All the other kids, idam para kid, you outro my gun, all the other kids, idam para kid, you better run, faster than my man, all the other kids, you better run, outro my gun, all the other kids, idam para kid, you better run, faster than my man, all the other kids, idam you better run, outro my gun, all the other kids, idam para kid, you better run, faster than
For your safety, do not.
Ha ha ha. Hello, everybody. Well, that's not meant to be there. There. Now we have maximum immersion. It's like we're really here. You can almost hear the cries of the dying and injured. And the smell of rotting carcasses and blood-stained mud. Hey, best girl Chile. Hey, how's it going now? I'll be honest, I'm pretty poor on the timing because I just grabbed some food. Hang on. Sneeze. Rest snuzz. So I was gonna work on the Flash animation today, but I mean I will.
Bless you.
Thank you.
Over.
And yeah, we are going to work on the animation, at least try and do something, something. But, at the moment, I'm just going to have some food. Also just came to the realization. Hang on. That's not the realization. Alright, never mind. Just came to the realization I have no content to watch. So the best you gotta make do with this. I've been watching for some reason.
Valor
For
Tower.
your safety, do not.
LOL. Over.
For some reason, I've been getting into this TGS anime. In fact, I'll subscribe just to be nice.
I can find something if you want.
Yeah, no worries if you got any preferences. Because I got no content. But I've been watching these. Was X about to defeat Y? And it's just a guy talking about Yu-Gi-Oh battles that abruptly ended. And he's talking about if someone would have won regardless. Or like Yu-Gi-Oh battles that don't have an actual conclusion. I've been going on, I've been looking too much Yu-Gi-Oh shit up.
Joey received no punishment. Marek ends his turn. It's Joey's turn and he draws Panther Warrior. He summons it to the field and enters
So
his...
this is, was Joey about to defeat Marek? I live an empty life. I live a very empty life, don't I?
battle phase.
Oh, well.
However, in order to attack with Panther Warrior...
It might be an empty life, but it's my life. And having you all here is all the fulfillment I need. Yes, I do. Thank you.
First is to sacrifice one of his tokens. He does this and attacks
Valord
Gilgard.
Coward.
It is destroyed and he inflicts both life points
Over.
and shadow damage to Marek.
Hell.
However, since Marek is a little bit of a masochist, we're not going to talk about Marek taking shadow damage anymore.
But
Because
I got spicy sausages. I don't know if the sausages are spicy, but I put spicy sauce on them.
Valord
Mashed
coward.
potato and beans and
But
peas.
I'd say you have too much time rather than an empty life. Over.
Fair point.
Because one, it doesn't really affect him that much. It does a little, but nowhere near as much as Joey. And two, I think he kind of likes it. It's Marek's turn and he draws Hidden Soldiers. He plays Tribute Burial to remove from play Alligator Sword from Joey's grave and Gilgar from his own to normal summon Hell Poema without a sacrifice. Marek ends by setting
Valord
Hidden
coward.
Soldiers. But wait a
Didn't
minute,
mean to
this is
interrupt
a
you.
massive red
Over.
flag
No
in
worries,
the
I got
duel.
enough
As
for that
Yugi on the
to interrupt it.
sidelines correctly states,
Or was
Why
not
didn't Marek
interrupted.
attack? He must be up to something.
why, pray tell, didn't Marek destroy Joey's 2 scapegoat tokens with his Hell Poema and Dralago? Or why didn't he do the more superior play of crashing his Hell Poema into Panther Warrior and then destroying a token? Well, it appears that the only reason that Marek did this, and is going to keep doing things like this for the rest of the duel, is because he has such little faith in Joey's dueling ability that he plans to win not through dueling. He wants to beat Joey in the most soul-crushing and traumatic way possible, by constantly wearing him down throughout the duel, by destroying as many of his monsters as possible in the worst ways he can possibly manage to do. To Marek, Joey is such a non-character. To him, he is not a threat in any sense of the word. There is no way, in Marek's mind, Joey could ever beat him in a duel. And through this way, he wants to end the
Valord
duel
coward.
with Joey simply losing
But
the
I
duel.
will grab you a few
from
different
death.
videos.
However,
Quality
ultimately, this is where
unverified.
Marek
Well,
is
we'll
out.
find out, innit?
It's Joey's turn and he draws Jinzo. Joey is suspicious of Marek's Hell Poema and thinks if he summons Jinzo to attack it, he'll lose one of his best cards. So instead he summons Rocket Warrior. However, this was completely the wrong move and a classic case of overthinking a situation. As when Rocket Warrior is summoned, Marek plays his trap, Hidden Soldiers, to special summon Plasma Eel from his hand. Plasma Eel equips itself onto Panther Warrior, reducing its attack by 500, and in the process also electrocutes Joey simultaneously. Joey then uses Rocket Warrior to attack Hell Poema, which makes all battle damage 0, but reduces the monster's attack by 500. Joey then tributes a sheep token to allow Panther Warrior to attack the weakened Hell Poema. The attack is successful. However,
Valord
Hell
coward.
Poema's effect kicks in.
I watch
now,
a
for
lot
as long
of
as it
crap
remains in
for
the
white
graveyard,
noise,
Joey
so
must
my
discard a random
recommendations
card
are
at the
kind
end
of
of every
fucked.
one of his battle phases.
Over.
And since Joey's battle phase ends, Jinzo is sent to the grave. 2 quick things to mention here. One, I'm sure you all realised it, but had Joey just summoned Jinzo here, then all of these problems that he's just run into would not be an issue. In fact, Marek would have been in a ton of trouble.
Didn't Jinzo used to be really powerful? Hang on. Trap cards and their effects on the field cannot be activated. Negates all trap effects on the field. Yeah, that's powerful as fuck, man. That's powerful as fuck. 2,400. Hang on. Skull. Is it Skull Knight? Am I thinking? No. Warrior? No. Summon Skull, that's it, yeah. I remember this being powerful as fuck too. One of the best beat sticks. Am I thinking of Summon Skull or am I thinking of something else? I can't remember the rules of Yu-Gi-Oh! But I remember there was this one really powerful monster that you could drop and you didn't have to like tribute summon it. Alright, let's go look that up. Hang on. I'm just eating. What's the matter? Yu-Gi-Oh!
Valord coward.
Powerful
Pot of greed. Over.
cards. Yeah, Pot of Greed was ludicrously overpowered. Most powerful classic cards. I can't remember what they call the ones. They call them. Is that the most powerful power credit cards? Ooh. the history of the Yu-Gi-Oh metagame. Maybe they'll mention it in here. Well, surely they will.
In late September of 2001, Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters began airing in the
gonna put
United
out the
States
sequel to
and
this?
almost immediately became a cultural phenomenon. The main focus of the
Yeah,
show...
the first starter decks.
Although the Legend of Blue Eyes booster set was responsible for introducing new people to the game, the release of the
No,
Kaiba
it's
and
gotta go
Yugi
to it,
starter
yeah.
decks was what really propelled it to the mainstream.
Yugi Kaiba format, that's like when, you know, a lot of people first got into the game, they got like their, you know, their starter decks.
The most important
Oh, but
thing about
I know what we can watch. For abject crack that goes on forever but is still mildly entertaining. I was watching I think one of the hardest Yu-Gi-Oh games is Forbidden Duels, I think is what it's called. And the reason why it's so hard is the AI literally cheats. Like, cunts have gone inside the game files and found out that the AI will literally have the cards in their hands change in relation to what, like at the final levels, the higher levels, the cards in their hand will literally change in accordance with what you summon.
Coward. Yeah, they spawn random cards.
Yeah. Like it's
Over.
straight rigged. It's straight rigged.
about these starter decks is that they gave all
Metal
potential
Raiders,
players
kinda
access
packed
to the
on
game's
Metal
official
Raiders.
rulebook. This, of course, allowed a competitive scene to even exist
Just
in
summon
the first
Skull.
place. And while the overwhelming majority of Yu-Gi-Oh's players were casual ones, local tournaments were already being held at various game shops, and many players showed a clear interest.
But yeah. Pot of Greed. Ludicrously powerful. To such a degree, you want to have like half your deck, or like half to a quarter of your deck be Pot of Greed if you're allowed it. I think they had like I think first they limited it to like 1 Pot of Greed. I think it was 1 or 3 Pot of Greeds or something like that, and then they just like, nah, it's too powerful. We're just gonna straight ban it. I mean, it's just a universal
Valord
benefit
Howard.
for no cost.
That's why speedrunning it was a bitch, because people would just get Exodia killed at least 5 times.
Yeah. Because
Over.
again, I remember hearing about some speedrunning shit. You had to get absurdly good RNG luck to get start off with the right deck, and then hope you get the right card unlocks for beating certain characters, and then after that you gotta hope that the AI just doesn't RNG a fucking bullshit strategy against you.
In not only building the most powerful
Yeah, hang on.
deck, but playing that deck
Guys,
the most
videos
optimally.
like I can't remember.
I'm told that this is a cross of chess and Pokemon. How exactly
this
does
guy.
one play Yu-Gi-Oh?
One could, at this point, describe Yu-Gi-Oh's rules as simple. Simple enough, anyway, that many people
Beast
were able to
Warrior
pick up the
deck.
basics just by watching the anime.
See, each card has an attack number and a defense number. First player to eliminate their opponent's life points wins the duel.
Like many other trading card games, Yu-Gi-Oh is built around the idea of stripping another player of a vital resource, in this case life points. The most straightforward and typically the most effective way to decrease a player's life points has always been to deal damage by attacking with monster cards. Unless stated otherwise, all monsters have the inherent ability to declare an attack either on an opposing player or on another monster, and a monster's attack point score is indicative of how much damage it deals when attacking and how powerful it is relative to other monsters. Given the landscape of the early game, it may have actually been true at this point that this attack point score was the most important thing about a monster.
I think Blue Eyes White Dragon at the time had the highest damage or attack score at 3,000. If I remember right. And then I think the next cap they had was 3-headed Blue Eyes White Dragon. Or as I like to call it, White Supremacist Dragon, eh? And I think that had like 4,000.
Following the release of both starter decks, the card pool was still fairly limited. While Legend of Blue Eyes brought a whopping 126 cards into the game, many of them were almost completely useless.
Because LOB, the cards were just awful. Monsters didn't even have effects. They're the only true effect monster was Exodia's head.
87 of these 126 cards were monster cards, and of those, 82 were either normal monsters or fusion monsters with no effect. Starter decks Yugi and Kaiba collectively added 59 more cards into the card pool, and 35 of them were also normal monsters. This meant that most of the available monsters were clearly and undeniably worse than the truly exceptional few worth playing.
La Jin was like a beast. 1800 beatdown, let's go.
Oh yeah, this kind, yeah, I think it's this kind I was thinking of. Where this kind had the highest attack damage and you didn't need to tribute summon it. You could just slap this fucker on the field and he basically went uncontested.
Mystical Genie of the Lamp was a level 4 monster with 1800 attack points, making it the most powerful monster a player could summon without tributing other monsters. Since the game prohibited players from playing any more than 3 copies of the same card in their deck, other weaker monsters like Neo the Magic Swordsman and Battle Ox, level 4 monsters with 1700 attack, were played alongside Legend as they provided more consistent access to powerful monsters that could be normal summoned immediately. Giant Soldier of Stone and even occasionally monsters like Aquamador and Mystical Elf saw play due to their high defense values. 2000 was, after all, the highest baseline stat printed on a level 4 or lower monster by far, but cards like these could typically only be used defensively, or as setup for the future summon of a monster like Summon Skull.
Summon Skull!
Yeah, boy.
Attack!
Summon Skull was very strong, one tribute monster that was the same attack as a Dark Magician.
While it certainly would have been cool if the format had been split between people playing Dark Magician and people playing Blue Eyes, Dark Magician was made obsolete by the level 6 Summon Skull. Summon Skull had, without a doubt, more attack points than any other 1 tribute monster in the game, and was even more powerful than many 2 tribute monsters like Gaia the Fierce Knight and Red Eyes Black Dragon. Blue Eyes, on the other hand, was, with no caveat, no asterisk, the most powerful monster in the game, but this came at the cost of it being much more difficult to summon than Summon Skull. Summon Skull was the more likely of the two to actually make its way onto the field, but if a person could manage to summon Blue Eyes, there wasn't a single monster that could kill it in battle aside from another copy of Blue Eyes. While these powerful normal monsters were the bread and butter of most early decks, they weren't the only monsters that saw competitive play. As few of them as there were, effect monsters did exist at this point, but many of them had effects that just weren't powerful enough to make up for their lackluster stats. Of the 13 available effect monsters, only 4 were truly useful, and even though it was still powerful, the weakest of these 4 was probably Hain-Hain. Hain-Hain, like many other early effect monsters, has a flip effect, meaning that its effect only activates whenever it's flipped face up, either by the person who initially summoned it face down, or as a result of being attacked while face down. Hain-Hain's effect allows a player to put any monster on the field back in the hand of its owner, which again was fairly powerful, but it was in most cases a strictly worse version of either Wall of Illusion or Man-Eater Bug. Wall of Illusion was arguably the best of the 4, as it had both a powerful effect and a respectable stat line. Its 1850 defense stat made it powerful enough to survive being attacked by anything that could be summoned without tributing, and on top of that, it would always at least temporarily remove anything that tried to kill it from the field. It effectively served the same purpose as Hain-Hain, but unlike Hain-Hain, it would usually remain on the field after being attacked due to its high defense stat, and it was also able to remove multiple monsters from the field, since its effect was not a flip effect and instead went off whenever it was attacked, even if the attack destroyed it, and even if it had already used the effect before. This made removing it from the field through battle incredibly annoying, as the only monsters powerful enough to do it had to be tribute summoned, and even if they were able to destroy the Wall of Illusion, they would be returned to the hand afterwards, and their owner would need to go through the process of tribute summoning them all over again. Man-Eater Bug and Trapmaster, the last of these 4, were, like Hain-Hain, flip monsters with removal-based effects. They actually seem to be part of a 3-card series, along with Armed Ninja, as each of their effects targeted and destroyed one of the game's 3 core kinds of cards: monsters, magic cards, and trap cards. Nobody played Armed Ninja because most powerful magic cards weren't worth setting face down, and with the sole exception of Swords of Revealing Light, didn't remain on the field after being activated. The ability to destroy monsters and trap cards, on the other hand, was extremely powerful, and more than made up for the pitiful attack and defense scores of both Man-Eater Bug and Trapmaster.
Sorry, my autism is kicking off like crazy. This absolutely fascinates me.
Man-Eater Bug, Legend, and Wall of Illusion were the game's first true staple monsters, and found their way into many decks, both competitive and casual alike. Trapmaster wasn't quite as omnipresent as any of these cards, but it was still popular among competitive players due to the power of trap cards.
Valord Coward. LMAO, don't worry, man. Over.
I played this. I summoned Pot of Greed in attack mode. This legend.
I summon Pot of Greed to draw 3 additional cards from my deck.
That's not what it does.
Roll my dice. That is what it does. Pot of Greed. Draw 3. I summon Pot of Greed to draw 3 additional cards from my deck. And I summon Pot of Greed to draw 3 additional cards from my deck. Then I play Magic Force, which allows me to play Pot of Greed once again to draw 3 additional cards from my deck.
And no, he's right. And I attack and I win, right?
No.
I don't have any
No.
monsters and
Oh, he's
monsters.
supposed to be here.
What? Oh, you got the Celtic Guardian.
Valor
My
Tower.
turn. I summon
Such
Dark
a fucking
Magician.
banger of a video.
I
Over.
also summon Jack's Knight.
What? How?
To be fair, it's a pretty accurate representation of Yu-Gi-Oh! In the actual show. I was watching a video earlier which was who's the biggest cheater in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime. And he goes over like the first couple of arcs in the original Yu-Gi-Oh! Series, and by the end of it, Yugi cheats like 57 times. Kaiba only cheats like 9 and Joey cheats 11 or something like that.
Summon a bunch of cards on one turn. It's against the rules.
You never saw this coming. I summon Pot of Greed to draw 3 additional cards from my deck.
That's not what it does. It doesn't
That
do
is
that.
what it does.
That's what it do, Yugi.
That's what it
That's what it do.
Very accurate representation of Yugi playing.
Trap cards offered the unique benefit of being usable during either player's turn, and were usually designed to take advantage of this. There were only 9 of them released between the first booster set and both starter decks, but a surprising number of them were actually pretty good. Without a doubt, the best of them were Trap Hole and Wabaku, cards that were so good that pretty much anyone who played the game ran both at 3. Trap Hole was one of the
Trap Hole, ooh. Ooh. Don't go in my trap hole, ooh.
most reliable forms of monster removal in the game, and was particularly useful against monsters that needed to be tribute summoned. Wabaku, meanwhile, was one of the only cards in the game that offered players any sort of protection from their opponent, and it was pretty good protection at that. It essentially skipped the other player's battle phase after being activated, and since it could be activated at almost any point during either player's turn, stopping it was really difficult. Another trap card that was extremely popular, but not quite as good as either of these two, was Reinforcements. The focus placed on attack points and the battle.
He's so powerful. Oh, he's going to attack my trap hole. Ooh.
Power of what was easily the best kind of card in the game, magic cards.
Black hole, black hole. Make your entire deck black hole.
Like trap cards, magic cards had effects that were, at the time, typically much more powerful than those given to monsters. Unlike trap cards and even flip monsters, however, magic cards can
What's
be...
the other one? Rengeki? Is that? Hang on.
Valord Coward. Pot of Greed and Black Hole.
Yeah, buddy, that's all you need.
Over.
That's all you need in life. Rengeki. Raigeki, there you go. This thing. Just destroy all monsters on your opponent controls. You just nuke the other side, man. Anti-Rengeki. If your opponent activates Rengeki, and if you negate its effect, and if you do, destroy all monsters your opponent controls. Nice. But yeah, this was so absurdly powerful, just a nuke, man.
Activated immediately, with no setup at all required from the player. This made them inherently more powerful than most monsters and traps, for the simple fact that they were much, much faster. Two of the most popular early magic cards were Fissure and Swords of Revealing Light. These two were pretty similar in function to Trap Hole and Wabaku respectively.
Valord
One could get
Coward.
rid of a monster, and to the other was a
Also
powerful
tossed a
stalling
bunch
card.
of
Both
shit
saw
into
about as
stream
much
links
success
for
as the
whenever.
staple
Just
trap cards
some
of the
extra
era, but they
shit
were
if
far
you
from the
run out
best
of
magic cards in the
UGIO
game.
vids.
They were completely eclipsed
Over.
by another
Let's
group
see
of
what we
cards,
got.
often referred to as the Power 5.
I've seen the failure of normal breeds video. I've seen that one. You're underrated, huh?
Valord coward. I haven't. Over. Valord coward. Is it good?
It's
Over.
alright. I guess if you don't really know the characters for normal breeds, you know, the completionist, John Tron, and Pro Jared. I mean, it's very, it does a good coverage of the timeline, but it's all quite surface level. So if you know these characters already, you kind of know what the video's about.
Valord coward.
And yeah,
RIC.
and at the very least,
Over.
I'm only interested in the fuck up part, where it all falls apart, and I already know about how it all fell apart for all of them. Ooh, a collection of horrible fates. We might watch the underrated one if we have time. I'll probably just watch Yu-Gi-Oh crap tonight though. Another time. Everyone loves spinning on Yandere Dev. Disgusting. Yeah, Dark Hole.
These weren't just the most powerful Magic cards in the game. They were, by a wide margin, the most powerful cards in the game.
I mean, these cards are iconic, right? Those are like classic.
Any deck that included them was better for it, and they were...
Gross. Are you into that? That's disgusting. That's what you said.
played by pretty much anyone who had access to them. They were so powerful, and so widely used, in fact, that they led to the creation of the game's first...
Yeah, buddy. This thing, oh, Pot of Greed, bro, so powerful.
Valord coward. LOL, thank you. Over.
Like Rengeki as well. Rengeki's just so powerful. Like, at least Black Hole, it was balanced in a sense. It was powerful, but it was balanced enough that, like, it also wiped out all the monsters on your side. So you could use it strategically, where you make sure your opponent's got more powerful shit than you do. But Rengeki is just a straight nuke, man. You don't even need to think about it. You just fucking nuke the cunt.
Forbidden and Limited list, where many of them have remained for the entire life of the game. The first edition of this list went into effect at the beginning of May, but it didn't actually ban any cards. 10 cards were limited and 2 were semi-limited. The first 5
DS. Over.
That's the bike one, isn't it? I predicted the future of the fucking Yu-Gi-Oh! Bridge series. Tristan, why are you riding a motorcycle? I predicted the future card games will be played on motorbikes.
Over.
Card games on motorbikes. Tristan, you say some of the dumbest shit sometimes.
The cards to be placed in the limited section were the 5 pieces of Exodia. While these cards did act as an alternate win condition, they have almost never been at the center of any of the game's most powerful decks. It was probably for the best that they were placed here, but it's hard to say that this had a substantial effect on the metagame. What ended up being far more impactful was the decision to limit the previously mentioned Power 5 Magic cards.
I can completely understand why these cards were all limited in the context of 2002 Yu-Gi-Oh! Just because these are games.
I never watched it. I was kind of out of Yu-Gi-Oh! At the time. And when I watched it and I saw them racing around on motorcycles, I was just like, I don't know, this seems a bit silly. So I never really got into it. But I have seen some, heard that, yeah, it's not bad. It's fine. In fact, maybe we'll go find reviews on all the Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime. Oddly enough, I liked, what was it, GX. GX was kind of, I guess, meh. It wasn't anything particularly special. Also, Alexis was hot as fuck. Am I allowed to say that anymore? I was allowed to say that when I was a kid. Yu-Gi-Oh! Alexis. I don't think I am. I'm pretty sure she's underage, so I might have to retract that for legal reasons. She's a very well-developed girl, I'll tell you that much.
Valord coward. I remember they had a duel where it was nothing but those weird spell card only decks.
Okay.
Over.
Alexis H. Damn it. Damn it. Damn it. Well, shit. If only I had some kind of time machine. But otherwise, I like GX just because the pacing was better.
Valord Coward. LOL.
I remember, yeah,
Over.
The one thing I absolutely hated, even as a kid, I hated the pacing of Yu-Gi-Oh! It was so fucking slow, man. And I was watching Dragon Ball Z at the time, alright?
Valord Coward. It was bad.
Yeah, it was.
Over.
The pacing was so fucking slow. I mean, it's kind of why it inspired the whole Abridged series. Was Yu-Gi-Oh! Abridged the original Abridged series, or was that Dragon Ball Z Abridged? I can't remember. But hey, at least in Dragon Ball Z, you got to see big shit blow up.
Valord
where they had
Coward.
the really fast fighting.
I remember it too, because they would recap the duel while the duel was happening.
Yeah, yeah.
Over.
And look, unlike Dragon Ball Z, you know, there's no actual, like, physical fighting. You know, they're playing a card game. So when action does happen, it's just basically people explaining cards. And then, like, there'll be, like, a quick animation and something will like, shatter. It wasn't very dramatic. Not worth the wait. But yeah, I like GX more because it paced a lot better. They confined it to one duel every episode. The only time a duel would last longer than an episode is if it was a boss battle or like some big finale duel. But in Yu-Gi-Oh, like even like the filler duels, you know, where you're fighting nobodies like My Valentine, even those would last multiple episodes.
Format warping cards for the time. When you have a card that literally just says destroy all monsters on your opponent's field, it's crazy, right? And it's so funny that a card that literally just says draw 2 cards.
So series, My Valentine, how do you keep ending up in these competitions? What do you mean? I'm a professional card duelist, but I don't think I've ever seen you win anything. Well, of course I do. I win. I do it when you guys aren't around. I mean, you lost to Taya. Taya.
Valord Coward.
She hasn't even
LMAO.
played the game, and she still
Over.
beat you. Well, I must be good, otherwise why does everyone keep allowing me into competition? I don't know, I guess that makes sense. Isn't that right, boys? Or just have the judges? Oh man, mine is so fucking hard. Yeah, we'll invite her into the next one. Yeah, buddy. And they were right. Ah. I can still be horny over her as an adult. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Oh, delicious. Oh, scrumdiddlyumptious.
Valord Coward. She's alright.
Look, I see why she gets invited to so many dueling competitions.
Kind of a bitch. Over.
And here I was thinking you'd be into that, nah.
Was limited, but like now in modern Yu-Gi-Oh sense is banned. That just goes to show how powerful drawing cards is in this game.
The 2 cards placed in the semi-limited section were also magic cards. While card destruction was not omnipresent in the early metagame, it may have been problematic if everyone could play 3 copies of it in their deck. This card in multiple quantities hypothetically makes it very easy to force another player to lose by decking out, and that aside, it was also occasionally played as a powerful draw card since Pot of Greed was now limited. Swords was a pretty big deal because unlike Wabaku, it allowed players to stall for 3 turns instead of just 1.
Like, stalling 3 turns was like, oh, I can draw into my Raigeki.
This ban list was the last major event of Yuki Kaiba format, which meant that the game was able to stabilize over the course of the next month. With Dark Hole and Raigeki limited, Fissure had become the most consistent way to get monsters off of the field with a card effect. It was one of the most reliable ways to get rid of a Wall of Illusion without attacking it, and it also made committing to a Tribute Summon too early very risky, which led many players to wait to summon their deck's boss monster until they had at least 2 monsters already on the field. This is one of a handful of reasons reasons that Summon Skull Beatdown ultimately became the best deck of the format. Setting up a field of 3 monsters before summoning the Blue Eyes was pretty tough, and in many cases, even if a player properly played around Fissure, their Blue Eyes would just get destroyed by Trap Hole, or perhaps even Raigeki or Dark Hole. For this reason, those truly dedicated to making Blue Eyes work often played Lord of D and the Flute of Summoning Dragon, cards that could help bypass the need to tribute monsters entirely. A handful of other cards were experimented with and saw scattered success throughout this period, but none would stick around for long. Yu-Gi-Oh! Was on the verge of its first major shakeup, brought about by the June release of its next core booster set.
Valor Coward. There is a certain limit of being a bitch, useful, annoying, and importance. Her values are fucked and feels like a character that ultimately doesn't matter.
Well, all of those things are true. But damn, she looks good in that purple leather. Blonde. Yeah, I'd throw a dueling game just to keep her around in the competition. Oh yes. If I was one of the organizers, I'd let her in despite her constantly losing. Oh yes.
This set's magic cards were actually largely overshadowed by many of its new traps, which brought with them the idea of a brand new form of interaction. Negation.
You activated my trap card actually started to matter.
Unlike, for example, Trap Hole and Wabaku, these were not cards meant to respond to one action or effect with another. The purpose of these new cards was to prevent certain things from happening entirely. There were 5 new cards with a negation clause in this set, and 4 of them in particular were designed to negate individual cards. All of them were counter trap cards, meaning that they couldn't be responded to once they were activated except with other counter trap cards, and they all allowed the player to trade some of their resources in order to completely negate the activation or summon of another card. What's interesting is they all asked the player for something different in exchange. They all had a different cost. And because of this, Solemn Judgment and Horn of Heaven saw very limited play.
A lot of people did not like Solemn Judgment during its original release. Like, it's the Omni Negate, but you have to pay half your life points.
I think it's fascinating that this didn't just become like a staple immediately out of the
Valor
gate. Like, I think looking back, some people are probably just like, I don't know why we just weren't all running 3 of this just because of how powerful the card it is.
It's a lot more because it was just a race at the time. It wasn't about...
Oh, do you think it looked better on me? Oh, you know, I look good in purple. It'll go
Valor
well with
Coward.
my hair.
Of course. Over.
Maintaining a solid position as much.
Magic Jammer and 7 Tools of the Bandit, on the other hand, did see immediate and widespread success, with Magic Jammer being the more popular of the two. Despite how good many of these new traps were, the Power 5 were still the best cards in the game. Negating any of them was typically better than negating another trap card.
Like, oh, but what if they Raigeki me and I spent all this time setting up my entire field and they're just going to destroy it all? Then they started to realize, hey, I can use stuff in my hand to kind of substitute the destruction.
That said, there was one new trap card in this set that could give the Power 5 a run for their money. Mirror Force also had a negation clause. It negated monster attacks, but what was much more important was after it negated the attack.
Mirror Force is just, it's a board wipe, but it's a board wipe that you get to use on your opponent's turn, which I think what was so appealing about it.
Especially with Mirror Force, where people have to manage the resource, not overcommit. That's when that evolution started to really take place in TCG anyway.
When does Jinzo show up?
Valord Coward. Oh, but next Picato stream, should watch some Yu-Gi-Oh! GX or 5DS. Over.
I'll see how many episodes there are. Because look, I am very much intent on watching Futurama, because Futurama is absolutely amazing.
Valord Coward. Of course. Over.
does Jinzo get introduced?
Magic cards can be activated with beams, and recycling them is a lot more effective than recycling trap cards. Also, at this point, magic cards were just generally better than traps anyway, and most of the good ones were limited to one copy per deck. Because of all of this, she was good enough to become a metagame staple, and many people chose to play the maximum 3 copies of her in their deck. While we're on the subject of spellcaster
Here we go,
type
the
effect
complete
monsters, there was
timeline.
another really good one released in this set. She and Sengen mostly did the same thing. They could search the player's deck for pretty much any monster they wanted, so long as that monster had less than 1,500 attack points in Sengen's case, or less than 1,500 defense points in Witch's case. Even though the card pool was very small at this point, these two had a vast range of search targets. They could even search for each other, and triggering their effects wasn't difficult at all. None of the other effect monsters released in this set were anywhere close to as popular as Sengen, Witch, or Magician of Faith, but there were still a handful worth mentioning. Crass Clown and Dream Clown saw occasional success as the focus of the brand
We
new...
need to get fucking... we need to get Tabletop Simulator going, and I'll verse you in classic Yu-Gi-Oh! Too bad I don't have a VR set. Then we do it in that. I summon Pot of Greed in
Valor
defense
coward.
mode,
LOL,
which allows
let's
me
do
to
it.
draw 3 cards. I had an idea for a Yu-Gi-Oh! Parody too, because I want to do a couple parodies, because I figured they'll get popular. People love shitty animated knockoffs of popular shit they used to watch as kids in the early 2000s. But it was going to be like a Yugi and Kaiba dueling, probably the first duel, I don't know. But it's just like, then I summon Blue Eyes White Dragon in attack mode. Psha! It's over, Yugi. Draw your last pathetic card. And Yugi's just like, what's so funny, Yugi? What's so funny is you've forgotten one thing. Ugh, and what's that? You're a fag. Ugh, shut up, Yugi. What's that, Kaiba? I can't hear you over how gay you are. Damn it, Yugi, if you're just gonna be an asshole, I'm not gonna play with you. But don't you see,
Valord coward.
you fell for my trap.
LMAO.
You activated my trap card. And now I activate this. And he pulls up the card. It's called, it's like, I use Shank. With this card, I get to stab you with a rusty prison knife, causing it to create an infected wound, causing you to lose 500 life points every turn. Kaiba's just like, Yugi, that's not a real card. Unfortunately for you, Kaiba. And then Kaiba turns around and Yugi's standing right behind him with his shank. It is. Stabs Kaiba in the gut. And Kaiba's just like, what the fuck? You stabbed me. You just fucking stabbed me. That's right, Kaiba. And now, because you have an open infected wound, you will lose 500 life points every turn. Kaiba's just on the ground bleeding. Yugi, our life points aren't a reflection of our actual physical health and well-being. And Yugi's like, oh, boy, the rules really changed from when I last played this in ancient Egypt. It just like cuts between Kaiba on the ground bleeding and Yugi thinking to himself a couple times, and then Kaiba's just like, get me to a fucking hospital! So that's my animation idea for that.
New clown.
Original, do not steal.
Valord
Do not
coward.
steal.
Solid.
Look,
Over.
I just wanna see Yugi stab Kaiba with a rusty prison knife.
Where you're actually trying to like kind of protect your clowns and switch them back and forth from defense, attack, and pop things while also using resource cards like Sangan, which I believe that's one of the other decks that pops up during this era.
At the same time, White Magical Hat and Masked Sorcerer laid the foundation for hand control, which was nowhere near as powerful as it would eventually become at this point, but saw light experimentation in a meta that was still mostly dominated by Beatdown and Dragon Rush. The main thing that kept these monsters out of the spotlight was their stats. Unlike most of the other staple effect monsters of the time, these cards
God. It reminded me of I just sprung to mind the video Deadpool showed us of the guys who were playing Yu-Gi-Oh! And then one of the players like accidentally misclicks and reveals a card for a split second when he wasn't supposed to, and he just puts it back down. And then the guy like stops and he's like, no, turn the card back up. And he's like, what? He's like, turn the card back up. You can't turn it up and turn it back down again. He's like, oh, sorry, I misclicked. I didn't mean to do that. He's like, no, you clicked it. You had to turn it back up. He's like, bro, it's just a misclick. I wasn't meant to do that. Alright, it happened. He's like, no, you clicked it. You had to turn it back up. And gets into a whole argument with the guy and then starts abusing him. And then the guy's like, if you keep abusing me, I'm going to call a moderator. He's like, good, go call a moderator. Then they'll see how you cheated. And then they call the moderator. Moderator comes in and he's like, hey, what's going on? And the other guy's like, hey, this guy cheated. And the other guy's like, hey, how did you cheat? He's like, oh, I didn't cheat. I accidentally clicked a card and it flipped it up. And I didn't mean to, so I flipped it back down. He's like, oh, yeah, so it was just a misclick. He's like, yeah. He's like, yeah, no worries, that happens. He's like, no, he has to go back up. That's cheating. And then the moderator's like, bro, it happens. It's just a misclick. He's like, it's like, well, I don't know what you're complaining about. You're at the advantage because now you know what his face down card is. It doesn't matter. He's like, then the guy starts abusing the moderator, man. And the moderator was like, bro, if you don't fucking behave yourself, I'm just gonna ban you. And then the guy just keeps abusing him. He's just like, you're encouraging cheating and shit like that.
Howard. LOLO, yeah, that video.
Yeah, and then the moderator's like, alright, mate, we're done here. Ban. Other guy wins by default.
Do anything upon being sent to the graveyard. In order to get anything out of their effects, players actually needed to keep them on the field, and doing so was pretty difficult when cards like Legion, Dark Elf, and Seven Colored Fish were all over the place. The clowns could be protected by cards like Wabaku and Mirror Force, and their effects could be used to get rid of any monsters more powerful than them, but there weren't a lot of ways to reliably trigger White Magical Hat's effect. There were a handful of halfway decent equipped magic cards released in this set that provided monsters with pretty substantial attack point boosts, but none of them were as strong as they needed to be to turn White Magical Hat into an actual threat.
There wasn't enough to really bump him up yet. You don't have actually to spare, but like people do start to get the idea.
I gotta look
that,
at when
if I can do that, it's great.
The best magic card in the set, without a doubt, was Heavy Storm. This card is Dark Hole, but for magic and trap cards, and it was invaluable for dealing with problematic pieces of disruption like Trap Hole and Mirror Force.
Heavy Storm taught people how to be conservative.
It ended up making it to where you just can't set infinite back row. It's like you always have to fear and respect Storm.
Because while Heavy Storm was in the format, if you went like set 5 pass, Heavy Storm was going to literally just obliterate you.
As with the previous batch of cards, many of these new cards were strong enough that it called for an update to the ban list. In July 2002, just 1 month following the set's release, Mirror Force was limited, and Sangan, Witch of the Black Forest, and Heavy Storm were all semi-limited. As was the case before, most decks were largely composed of a bunch of the same good staples, and only really diverged when it came to a handful of individual cards. That said, Beatdown and Dragon Rush were still different enough that they were given different names, and both were still all over the place. There was now an even more noticeable slant in favor of Beatdown as the consistency gap.
Now, where's Jinzo then? So we have World Championship. World Championship 4. It's somewhere around here.
Magician's Force was released exactly 2 months after the date of the World Championship, and just over a month after the start of the 4th season of competitive play. One thing that's noteworthy about it is that it was the first set to use the term spell card instead of magic card. This was due to legal reasons that aren't relevant to the competitive history of the game, but it is important since from here on out we'll be referring to these as spell cards. Funnily enough, none of the new spell cards were really that good anyway. All of the worthwhile cards in the set were monsters, and many—
is that because Magic the Gathering came into existence around this time? Yeah, to have a fucking legal pissing match about that? Did I mention Shinzo?
Many of them were ironically spellcaster type. First of all, the set
Valor Coward.
They were just completely taken.
Most likely, Grand Wizards of the Coast are very litigious if I remember.
On
Sounds
August
about
25th,
right.
through a somewhat unorthodox update to the Forbidden and Limited list, it was announced that 13 cards would be forbidden starting October 1st.
Forbidden!
The game would stay as it was for just over a month, and during this period, Chaos continued to dominate as expected. At what was then the largest Yu-Gi-Oh! Tournament ever with nearly 1,200 players, a European event named Battle City Amsterdam, every single player in the top 8 was playing both Blackluster Soldier and Chaos Emperor Dragon, and 6 of these players were also playing Yatagarasu. While the August announcements had upset a few people because, well, frankly, if the October list looked anything like Upper Deck said it was going to be a total bloodbath, to a lot of people something like this was starting to look pretty necessary. The game was approaching an event horizon of sorts, something conveyed extremely well by the fact that just a week after these changes were announced, but not officially enforced, at a massive tournament with exponentially more player attendance than any tournaments before it, the decks created by the top 8 players there all shared at least 20 of the same cards. The game was facing a serious diversity problem, or lack thereof, one that only something this drastic could fix. To say that it did change the game when these bans finally took effect on October 1st would be a massive understatement. This update was insane, borderline apocalyptic, and in addition to the bans that were announced back in August, this list also limited 5 cards out of the blue. Then, just like that, with the stroke of a pen from Upper Deck and Konami, Chaos, at least as people currently knew it, was totally annihilated.
Delete. Delete.
Along with the rest of the metagame. To say this changed things a lot. Many of these cards were in a league of their own in terms of popularity, to the extent that the term staple doesn't do them justice. It can be said without hyperbole that most of them were included in literally every successful tournament deck. Of the 3 banned cards that this didn't apply to, 2 of them had been key pieces in the most powerful deck in the game. That said, the list didn't fundamentally change the game as much as one might expect. There were still quite a few building blocks left over from the previous format that people could use as a foundation for deck building. Seeing as there were also a lot of cards that people had experimented with throughout the reign of the Chaos Monsters, there was actually still plenty to work with when constructing this new metagame. Plus, on top of that, there were 2 more core booster sets scheduled to be released around this time. As long as both of them weren't repeats of the Ancient Sanctuary situation, then they'd have to include some new cards that could help fill the void. Soul of the Duelist was released on October 1st, the same day these ban list changes took effect, and the next set, Rise of Destiny, wasn't far behind. It came out just 2 months later on the 1st of December for most TCG players, though some regions, like France and Spain, received the set even earlier on the 1st of November. These sets both shared the same major issue, which was that they were mostly filled with lackluster cards. There are many things about them that are arguably more interesting than the cards they added to the game, actually. Soul of the Duelist was the first TCG booster set to follow the OCG's release structure. The OCG's core sets had always brought
Another one of my favorite Yu-Gi-Oh! Breach jokes. Hold it there. Hey, what's the big idea? You're not allowed on Duelist Island. Why not? I got a tag and everything. Sorry, your hair isn't wacky enough to be a real duelist. Yugi walks up. Oh, don't worry, he's with me. Holy shit, kid. Your hair's wacky enough for the whole ship.
meant that many of the set's better cards would be easier to obtain. The thing is, the set really only had one good card, and that was Mobius the Frost Monarch. With Feather Duster banned and Mystical Space Typhoon limited, spell and trap removal had become much more scarce than many players were used to. This card allowed players to easily destroy multiple cards in their opponent's back row, which made it a popular side deck option moving forward. But that was it, really. Ojama King and Sandwich were decent cards that could be summoned with Magical Scientist, and there were some other cards in the set that saw experimentation around this time period, but none of them made their way into topping deck lists at premier events, aside from occasionally popping up in one or two side decks here and there. Rise of Destiny was very similar in terms of how it impacted the game. Darkblade the Dragon Knight was another popular fusion monster that could be summoned by Magical Scientist, and two tramp cards from the set, Divine Wrath and Pikeru Circle of Enchantment, made their way into tournament deck lists almost immediately, but usually only in the side deck and only occasionally. Something else that was unique about these sets is that neither of them prompted a dedicated ban list update. This had technically been true of Ancient Sanctuary as well, though according to Upper Deck, the October 1st list had been, quote, updated for Ancient Sanctuary. All things considered, the Titanic ban list update, the changes to the way the ban list was handled, and to the core booster sets, the game felt noticeably different from this point forward, and these weren't even the only new developments in the tournament scene. While regional tournaments were still happening just as frequently as they had been before, starting in December they'd be joined by a new kind of tournament called Shonen Jump Championships. These events were hosted jointly, in part by Upper Deck and in part by Shonen Jump, the company responsible for publishing the Yu-Gi-Oh! Manga. According to Upper Deck, SJC tournaments were meant to be a tier above regionals in terms of prestige, not on the same level as something like the World Championship, of course, but essentially the height of competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! During the normal tournament season. Among the top 8, deck lists were somewhat varied since the new meta was still far from solved, but there was one type of deck that was more popular than everything else. It actually had a few different names because it wasn't particularly well defined at this point. One of its most popular names was Cookie Cutter, since while each version of the deck usually wasn't the same from person to person, it was generally thought of as an assortment of various staple cards. In Metagame.com's coverage of SJC Gen Con, they called this deck Hybrid, though many players still called it Chaos Control because it almost always played Black Luster Soldier along with a suite of light and dark monsters. The deck's identity and game plan certainly weren't as clear as those of prior decks like Beatdown, Control, and Chaos, but most players knew they were looking at it when they saw it. This deck, whatever it was, took up 6 of the top 8 spots at SJC Gen Con, and all 6 of them were playing Black Luster Soldier, in addition to 21 more of the exact same cards. 29 of the same cards can be found in at least 5 of the 6 Cookie Cutter main decks, 31 in at least 4, and 37 in at least 3. Given how much all of these lists had in common, it was pretty much impossible to deny that this deck did have a unique identity, even if it was one that was much less pronounced than most players were used to. The remaining 2 top 8 players were Henry K, playing Magical Scientist FTK, and Miguel Flores, playing an Earth deck. Miguel's deck was pretty similar to the other Cookie Cutter lists in a lot of ways, so in order to distinguish between the 2 of them, it wasn't uncommon to call the more popular version of the deck Cookie Cutter Chaos, and to call other non-Chaos versions of the deck Cookie Cutter Blank, in this case Cookie Cutter Earth. One thing that's particularly striking about the deck lists here is the lack of cards from Soul of the Duelist and Rise of Destiny. Some of them were present, but the tournament was dominated by cards from March of 2004 and earlier. The only deck present in the top 8 that significantly benefited from any new cards was Magical Scientist, which was made even more consistent by the newly released Serial Spell and by Monster Gate from Ancient Sanctuary. Dark Magician of Chaos, Reload, and the slew of new fusion monsters with more than 2100 attack points didn't hurt either, so the Magical Scientist deck present at this tournament was probably the most consistent version of the deck so far. Things didn't change too much in the coming months, at least not on a macro level. At the next 3 SJC events, which all took place in February of 2005, Cookie Cutter Chaos either maintained or increased the top 8 representation it had established at SJC Gen Con. Now, while the big picture metagame mostly stayed the same, the perception of all sorts of individual cards changed to varying degrees throughout this time period. All sorts of experimental stuff saw tournament success as the format continued to develop, and some of these cards even managed to catch on as key players in the metagame. The relatively newly released Blade Knight and DD Assailant, cards both released as part of different promo packs in the last quarter of 2004, were quite a bit more popular in February than they had been in December. Some people in the top 8 of SJC Gen Con had been playing Blade Knight, but it was a lot more common to see this at the 3 SJCs that happened in February. DD Assailant went from not being present in the top 8 of SJC Gen Con at all to being somewhat popular among topping players at all 3 SJCs in February. This was a little bit surprising since he wasn't a light or a dark monster, and his effect was a little bit worse than DD Warrior Ladies, but this definitely wasn't the weirdest meta trend of early 2005. With Mystical Space Typhoon Limited, the combo of using Mirage of Nightmare together with it had become significantly harder to do, but nobody actually wanted to stop playing Mirage of Nightmare, so it became fairly standard to play a copy or 2 of Emergency Provisions just to destroy the Mirage and keep all the cards it allowed the player to draw. This was the only thing that generated any interest in this card from tournament players, though. A card named Metamorphosis from Pharaonic Guardian also kept popping up here and there, usually just as a one-of in the main deck. Now, this card hadn't been completely invisible since its release back in 2003 or anything, but it had never been at the forefront of the metagame. A few months after it was added to the card pool, Magical Scientist was released, a searchable way to summon a bunch of fusion monsters all at once without losing any card advantage. Metamorphosis forced whoever was using it to tribute a monster first, before they could summon the fusion monster. This was a 2-card investment, since the Metamorphosis itself had to be used, and it had to take a monster off of the field with it. Compared to Magical Scientist, who stayed on the field after using his effect, this felt obsolete, like a needlessly bigger commitment. More people started experimenting with it in 2004, after the release of Invasion of Chaos, because one important thing that was better about it than Magical Scientist was the fact that it kept the fusion monster it summoned on the field permanently, at least until the monster was destroyed. This was important for a couple of reasons. Like, first of all, it was a lot easier to put a monster summoned by Metamorphosis into the graveyard than it was to put a monster summoned by Magical Scientist into the graveyard. Usually, the monsters summoned by Scientist ended up in the extra deck. It was possible to get them into the graveyard, just not particularly practical. There were also plenty of good fusion monsters that had really good effects while they were on the field. Effects that were good regardless of whose turn it was. The best examples of this were Thousand Eyes Restrict and Last Warrior from Another Planet, cards that were significantly more impactful if they managed to stay on the field for more than one turn. Now by 2005, Magical Scientist wasn't searchable anymore because both Sengen and Witch were banned. Plus, now that players didn't have to worry about both Black Luster Soldier and Chaos Emperor.
Look, I'll try and do something. Just a little bit of progress, at the very least. Remember, all progress is good progress.
Dragon together in the game at the same time, Yu-Gi-Oh! Had slowed down enough to make a lot of the monsters that this card could summon viable control tools. Magical Scientist was still the preferred choice for summoning fusion monsters at this point, significantly more popular than Metamorphosis was, but this could only stay true, of course, as long as Magical Scientist was legal to play. The player base was expecting a new ban list update at any moment now, after all, and the last one had gone pretty far out of its way to get rid of any problematic cards, which most players agreed Magical Scientist was one of. The card was definitely a relic of a bygone era that many players wanted to see gone. And, well, if the promotional material for the next booster set was indicative of anything, it seemed like the game was more than willing to leave some aspects of its roots behind. For the first time ever, Yugi wasn't even on the cover of the next booster set. In fact, one of the Japanese posters advertising the set featured a totally different guy who looked like he was from an anime, but he definitely wasn't from Duel Monsters.
Alright, here we go, the Yu-Gi-Oh! Complete timeline.
I finally done it, Internet! My theories are finally complete! I've explored every inch of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Fandom, searched every corner of the wiki, over 1,000 anime episodes, countless manga pages, millions of pieces of the puzzle all coming together. And now, the complete Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime and manga timeline!
You know, I don't know if you... Here's a little trivia. Before Yu-Gi-Oh! Was named Yu-Gi-Oh! I think it was called Game Masters. And the thing had a much darker tone. People died. And the dealio was... Well, the gimmick was gonna be... Well, because this was back when it was like a serialized thing for some fucking anime magazine. Or manga magazine. The gimmick was every... episode or serial or whatever the fuck they're classified. But basically every episode was going to be about a different game. So they're playing the game like chess or battleships and shit like that. Or, I don't know, poker. They'd be playing that at school. You know, explain the rules and blah blah blah. Talk some shit. And then something would happen. Something related to the game, and then they'd play like a darker version of the game. And one of those was a card game. A trading card game. I think it was just called... I can't remember what it was called. No, I can't remember what it was called. Well, it wasn't Yu-Gi-Oh! It was like Card Monsters or some shit like that. Something stupid.
Valord Coward.
Dueling Duel Monsters.
I think.
Yeah, I think it was Duel Monsters.
Over.
And yeah, the first episode... They also released an OV, but basically when it was still a manga, before we get to the anime, basically the Duel Monsters, the manga was already popular. It wasn't that popular though. Well, popular enough obviously that they got multiple fucking editions. But the Duel Monsters one got a lot of people to write in and asking questions about how Duel Monsters works and shit like that. And then people started also asking, like, is there an actual Duel Monsters game or anything like that? And then, Shonen.
Oh hey, real quick. Sent you the payment. Want to check on your end. Over.
Hang on, I don't think I heard my phone go off, so it might just be in transit. Oh no, there it is. Nice. Nice. Thank you very much. Oh, go send off the Ravenous. Ugh, Ravenous artwork then. After the stream. Ah, but thank you for that. Now I'm gonna need that money because I gotta go buy fucking for Clip Studio Paint. So I've been practicing some animation on Clip Studio Paint. Brain. Hang on, thinking. But if I want to do animation in Clip Studio Paint, there's two versions of Clip Studio Paint you can buy. There's the regular version, the Pro version, which is like $50. And then there's the X version, which is the one that has animation. I mean, they both have animation, but you're limited to only 24 frames of animation in the Pro version. But if you want unlimited frames of X...
Yeah man, sorry for the wait. I added on nearly $60 extra for interest.
Aww, you didn't
Over.
need to do that. Aww, thank you. Aren't you a dear? But okay, so the EX version of Clip Studio
Valord
Paint is
coward.
like 200 something bucks.
I did, thank you. Over.
So yes, don't worry. Oddly enough, I actually do need that money. But yeah, what a chip. The Pro version only gives you 24 frames to work with. To get unlimited frames, I gotta go pay another 150 bucks. Fucking Japanese, man. Bunch of fucking con artists, that's what they are.
Valord coward. Man, that's fucked.
Oh well, at least it's only a
Over.
one-time payment, so I guess that's nice enough. Still probably cheaper than Adobe. And the cool thing about Clip Studio Paint is it is an all-in-one
Valord
program.
coward. Think you can find a cracked version?
Yeah,
Over.
surely I could, but again, at least it's a one-time payment. Like, that's the one thing I hate, absolutely hate about Live 2D is that you can't get a one-time payment. You have to subscribe. So my cunning plan was I feel like I should get a
Coward.
licensed version.
Subscription bullshit.
Yeah.
Over.
I may as well buy a proper licensed version, especially because I do plan on making animations that, you know, I would like people to pay for, perhaps eventually. So I may as well get that legal fucking hurdle done. But in all seriousness, I'll probably get a pirated copy of a cracked version of Live 2D for personal projects. And then if anyone wants to commission me for a Live 2D model, I'll just go pay for the fucking premium. And then make it with that. And then when I'm done, I'd go and subscribe to the premium. But yeah, can't believe you can only subscribe to Live 2D, fucking cunts. Fucking dogs, man. But yeah, at least clips, like in all
coward.
honesty,
But hey, I want to quickly say, thanks for your work and the personal stuff we do on Picato, so the interest is no big deal on my end.
no worries,
Over.
bud. Well, I'm glad you enjoy it. As long as you get your money's worth, that's the most important thing. I mean, I know Bethesda. Bah! Bah!
Valord coward. I wish I could give more. Over. Valord coward. LOL.
But that's why, if you,
Over.
you wish you could give more, that's why it's important to put yourself first. Focus on your happiness and your career and your livelihood. Because after all, if you become happy, healthy and successful, that means you have more money to give to me. Everyone wins.
Valord coward. LOL smart.
Exactly.
Over.
See, I'm in it for the long haul. I'm not like the other girls who merely want to sink their fangs into you and suck you dry. No, of course not. I want you to get plump and fat, and then I merely take a toll of blood. I don't want to kill you, suck you dry, and cast you aside to find a replacement. No. I will get you plump and delicious, and like a vampire bat, I will suck a little bit of blood here and there. You won't even notice. I guess I'm more like a leech.
Valord coward. LMAO nice.
Yeah, buddy. But yeah, at least the cool thing about, I mean, for the animation shit, I mean, Clip Studio Paint is probably decent money's worth for like 200 something bucks. Because I mean, it is an all-in-one program. You got vector and raster drawing, and you can do animation and static images. And I think a very rudimentary level of image control. I don't think it's quite Photoshop levels, but I'm pretty sure you can do some basic like Photoshopping sort of shit. So yeah, when I buy it, I guess that's it for Krita. I guess I'm done using Krita now. May as well use fucking Clip Studio Paint.
Okay, here we go. Not the first to try his hand at this topic, probably not the last. Here's hoping I ain't the worst. The Yu-Gi-Oh! Timeline is a bit of a mess. There are currently 8 anime shows and coincidentally 8
Valord
manga
coward.
projects. The original Duel
Hell yeah,
Monsters
man.
anime was adapted
Glad I
from the
could
Duel
be
Monsters
part of the
manga,
upgrade.
But none
Yeah,
of the other
buddy.
series are
Over.
adaptations. And the first 3 series of these
You are my rock. You are the foundation from which my great empire shall emerge. A cornerstone of the pantheon to my glory. The dirty, naughty, gross pillar of
Valord
that
coward.
pantheon.
Yeah, boy.
Oh,
Over.
the disgusting pantheon I wipe my dirty boots on. Oh, yes.
anime all seem to take place in the same universe, but everything after that seems pretty self-contained. Sorta. So before I start to make heads or tails of this, I know that some of you are already running to the comment section to say that there is no overarching, interconnected Yu-Gi-Oh! Continuity, that the show is just a series of 30-minute card commercials, and that I am wasting my time by talking about this. And if you're doing that, I have just one thing to say to you.
It's boring. You're boring, everybody. Quit boring everyone.
Okay, so we're gonna start with the first 5 anime shows. Yu-Gi-Oh's Duel Monsters, GX, 5Ds, Zexal, and Arc 5. And for the purposes of this theory, all of these shows take place one after the other in one mostly unbroken timeline. Duel Monsters happens, then GX, then 5Ds, then Zexal, then Arc 5. In Duel Monsters, we learn that the world used to be full of dark magics, and that sorcerers in ancient Egypt used this magic to play the Shadow Games, rituals that allowed them to bind and control the spirits of monsters. The Shadow Games brought the world to the brink of destruction, until an ancient pharaoh was forced to seal away the games to protect mankind from the threat that they represented. Millennia passed, and an archaeologist named Maximilian Pegasus discovered the historic remains of the Shadow Games while on a dig in Egypt. He was granted the Millennium Eye by the spirit guardian Shadi, and used it in order to...
Ayo, Shouty! Ayo, Shouty! Shouty got them apple bottom jeans, boots with the bird, the whole club was looking at her. She hit the floor, next thing you know, Shouty got low,
Valord
low,
coward.
low.
LMAO goddammit.
Shouty got
Over.
Yu-Gi-Oh! Oh.
and mass market the Shadow Games as the modern game of Duel Monsters. This led to a renewed interest in Egyptian archaeology, which sent Solomon Moto searching through old tombs and crypts, until Solomon discovered the Millennium Puzzle, which he then gave to his grandson, Yugi. Upon solving the puzzle, Yugi unlocked the spirit of the ancient Egyptian pharaoh sealed within, and found that this spirit would come to his aid in times of great difficulty, and was particularly adept at helping him play the game of Duel Monsters. Yugi meets the Duel Monsters national champion, Seto Kaiba, who kidnaps Solomon in order to steal his incredibly rare Blue Eyes White Dragon card, which he proceeds to shred before their very eyes. Yugi challenges Kaiba to a revenge duel, which the spirit of the Millennium Puzzle helps him win by being the first player to ever successfully summon Exodia, the Forbidden One. This win attracts the attention of Maximilian Pegasus, who uses his Millennium Eye to imprison Solomon's soul away within a playing card, and coerces Yugi into competing in his upcoming Duelist Kingdom tournament. For corporate reasons, and to see his dead girlfriend again, but mostly corporate reasons. Yugi and the Pharaoh proceed to win Pegasus's competition, saving all of his victims and establishing Yugi as something of an international celebrity. Immediately following the end of the tournament, Kaiba returns home, only to find out that his company has been taken over by 5 members of its executive board, who proceed to trap him inside of a virtual reality simulation that Yugi and company have to rescue him from. His brother Mokuba was there. It was weird. Believe it or not, this is going to be important later. After saving Kaiba, Yugi and the Pharaoh go on to compete in the Battle City tournament, where the Pharaoh learns about his past as the ruler of Egypt, and that his powers are tethered to the spirits of the 3 Egyptian god monsters. The competition becomes a free-for-all power grab, as various factions attempt to use it as a front to collect all of the god cards and the powers of the Pharaoh for themselves. But when the dust settles, Yugi is left holding all 3 god cards and 4 of the Millennium items. Oh, and there was this whole thing with Kaiba's other brother. That's sorta gonna be important too. The story basically hits pause while the gang does a side quest in Atlantis. Darts and the Seal of Orichalcos, the legendary dragons, that stuff all happens, all counts. The Kaiba Corp Grand Prix, yeah, that technically counts. And then the show wraps up with the Pharaoh and the Spirit of the Millennium Ring playing a shadow game in the memory world that ends with everything being fine. The planet does not get destroyed, the good guys win, and after one last duel, Yugi and the Pharaoh finally part ways, with the Pharaoh departing for the land of the dead, while Yugi prepares to move on to adulthood. So that's point 1 on our timeline. Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters. Done. Next we have Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, which takes place 10 years later when Yugi bumps into a kid named Jaden Yugi, who is late for his entrance examination at Kaiba's fancy duel school. Our old hero's just kinda got a feeling about this kid, and so he hands...
Let's still take it. Since we're up to the part where Kaiba opens up an entire school dedicated to playing Duel Monsters, let's also take a moment to remember Kaiba once paid a shitload of money to have to put Duel Monsters cards in a fucking satellite they were sending off into space in case aliens found it, so the aliens can learn how to play Duel Monsters. True fact.
Over his winged Karibo card and wishes Jaden luck. Jaden proceeds to win an examination duel that's been rigged against him in order to get into Duel Academy, and he ends up in the Slifer dorm, which is where students with the lowest grades and records are placed, but he still ends up being the best in his year anyways. In his first year,
Valord
he stops a
coward.
gang of duelists from getting their hands on
Kaiba
the
is
sacred
just
beast
fucking
card,
hilarious.
which could potentially led to the end of the world. In his second year, he stops a fortune teller who is possessed by a psychic light from using a satellite to brainwash the entire planet. Don't ask, it doesn't make any more sense in context. Then in his third year, he meets a cute boy, goes dimension hopping with him, runs into his ex-girl card, watches all of his friends die, becomes a mass murderer, self-actualizes, patches things up with his ex, and goes on to save the world from the devil before having a for funsies duel in the past with Yugi. A bunch of other characters and locations from Duel Monsters show up. Kaiba actually owns the Duel Academy where Jaden and his friends go to school, and there's also this blink and you'll miss it throwaway reference to Yugi's old high school bully, Tetsu Trudge, in the show's last season. Pretty easy to place this show in the timeline just after Duel Monsters. Then comes Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds and the story of Yusei Fudo. It's pretty clear from the get-go that this is the same Yu-Gi-Oh! We've always known, but different. We're a little ways in the future, and our protagonist is an orphan who grew up in the Satellite, a junk town that is all that remains of Domino City, the primary setting of Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters, and a reoccurring setting in Yu-Gi-Oh! GX. The upper class of society lives in New Domino City, where event duels are held in a state-of-the-art arena called the Kaiba Dome, again a reference to Yugi Moto's original rival. We also learn that Kaiba's company, the Kaiba Corporation, was responsible for reconstruction efforts after Domino was destroyed, and that they eventually
Kaiba
developed
construction,
dual
man.
technology for the support of turbo dueling. Oh, and Yugi's old high school bully Trudge, he shows up again here too. Now he's a thuggish beat cop who starts off working for the bad guys, before he learns that friendship is the true meaning of card games on motorcycles. 5Ds definitely feels like the same world as Duel Monsters and GX. It's just aged up a little bit. The franchise is finished going through puberty, and now it's ready to save the world with a driver's license. But here's where things start. 5Ds is a time travel show, and most of the events we see actually take place in an altered version of history. We eventually learn that in the original version of time, Kaiba Corp developed a technology called Momentum, or NRD in the dub, a sort of nuclear power plant that runs on the newly developed synchro summoning mechanic in the Duel Monsters card game. And this new synchro technology led to a golden age of prosperity on Earth. And everybody just played Yu-Gi-Oh! All day while riding on their motorcycles, and everything was just perfect. But humanity didn't realize that using synchro monsters to run their power plants was affecting the evolution of the species. Momentum reactors were basically releasing dual monsters radiation across the planet, and people spent 200 years mutating because of it, becoming more cruel, selfish, and destructive. They kept pushing momentum technology further and further without realizing that Moment, the operating system running all the momentum tech on the planet, had become self-aware, which led to a classic man versus machine apocalyptic war called the Mech-Lord Genocides, which ended when all the momentum reactors on the planet exploded, wiping out both sides and
Valord
leaving
coward.
the war without a winner.
Holy fuck, was it this wild? Over.
Well, apparently, I never watched 5D. I'll be honest. I didn't. I was not expecting Yu-Gi-Oh! To have its own genocide. That is not something, you know, I thought there would be far more distance between Yu-Gi-Oh! And genocide, you know what I mean?
Valord coward. For real. Over.
Wasn't this meant for kids? I summoned the disgruntled Austrian painter. And not only that, I summoned my field card, Auschwitz, giving him 500 attack points. Now, Austrian painter, use your gas attack to attack my opponent's life points directly.
However, there were 4 human survivors: Zone, Antinomy, Aporia, and Paradox. And these 4 scientists searched for a way to break. There were 4 human survivors: Zone, Antinomy, Aporia, and Paradox.
Look at this fucking goober, man. This fucking goober. Also, what's about this guy? He got one of his eyebrows shaved off. Look at this fucking goober, man. What a goober.
And these 4 scientists searched for a way to bring back humanity by changing the past, salvaging any functional human or mech-lord technology that they could find in order to build a working time machine. And eventually, they succeeded and journeyed back in time. Okay, well actually, no. Technically, they all got old and died, but their consciousnesses were uploaded into android duplicates of themselves, and the androids are completely capable of feeling emotion and remembering the pain of mankind's end. So the androids went back in time, which feels like an unnecessary complication in the story, but whatever. In any event, that's the end of the original Yu-Gi-Oh! Timeline. We've got Duel Monsters, and then GX, and then the Kaiba Corp releases momentum technology into the world.
I sacrifice Austrian painter and his field card, gas chambers, or men in white shoes.
Dies, and 4 robots go back in time to try to fix it. That is the complete first Yu-Gi-Oh! Timeline. It's a very sad story, but fortunately for everybody, this timeline gets completely over.
And then they all just fucking die. And then they all just fucking die.
It doesn't exist anymore. After abandoning the year 2200 and something, the Zone, Antinomy, Paradox, and
Valord
Aporia
coward.
androids proceed to spend
Fucking
centuries
amazing.
rewriting history and
Over.
various failed attempts at preventing the Mech-Lord genocides from ever happening. They founded a secret society known as Iliaster in order to reshape history over the course of millennia, and throughout 5Ds, we see Iliaster change history several times. But each time that they do, the present is rewritten to reflect its new past. When Paradox goes back in time to kill Duel Monsters creator Maximilian Pegasus, we watch Yusei's period in history begin to collapse as its relative past is altered. Yusei has to follow Paradox back in time and save Pegasus in order to prevent his world from being erased. This is important because the next show in the series, Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal, or Zale if you prefer the original pronunciation, is where things start to get fuzzy. The story of Zexal follows Yuma Tsukumo as he bonds with an
Oh, look at this goober. Look at this fucking goober, man. Fuck, Yu-Gi-Oh's all about them wild ass hairstyles, man. Like, hang on. This cunt is like the most normal
Valord
looking
coward.
main character.
Jesus Christ. Over.
In fact, now that I think about it, probably Yu-Gi-Oh! GX has the most normal looking main character cast. It is probably the most normal looking cunts. And one guy's got a fucking got a fucking T-Rex bandana. I guess some of these guys look normal enough. But fuck me, look at this cunt. Fuck me, what's the maintenance on that hair, bro? Hang on, what was it? It's called D5? 5D. I got it the wrong way around. 5D. She looks like that chick from fucking Code Geass. But I guess these guys look normal enough. And we just gotta say it's pretty wacky. Well, it's not that wacky. I think Yu-Gi-Oh's hair is still wackier. But there you go, fine. Look at what is this? What is going on there, mate? What's going on there, mate? Fucking wild and character designs, man. Fucking wild and.
Where things start to get fuzzy.
Valord
The
coward.
story of Zexal follows Yuma
Fucking
Tsukumo as he
wild.
bonds with an alien
Over.
spirit creature named Astral, who's suffering from some card game-related amnesia. The series focuses on players as they
Aliens.
search for Astral's lost memories, and later find themselves caught up in a war between Astral's homeworld and the invaders from Barian World. Unlike all the previous shows, Zexal doesn't go out of its way to draw a line back to its predecessors. There are no characters from Duel Monsters GX or 5Ds around. There are no subtle name drops or familiar locations, and all the new mechanics introduced in 5Ds, like synchro summoning and turbo dueling, are just gone. But there is suddenly this new mechanic called Xyz summoning, which works kind of like synchro summoning, but, different. Plus, the show kind of feels like a soft reboot of Duel Monsters, with Yuma and Astral's relationship and final duel with one another closely mirroring the story of Yugi and the Pharaoh. Maybe this is the beginning of its own separate universe. But I genuinely don't think so. 5Ds went out of its way to establish that Yu-Gi-Oh's story existed on a single, rewritable timeline. So it would be weird for the next entry in the franchise to throw that out right away. And there are a lot of subtle clues connecting Zexal back to the original trilogy of Yu-Gi-Oh shows. For example, the Fudo family from 5Ds promised us that momentum technology would lead to a venerable utopia for all of mankind, which is exactly what Heartland City seems to be. Pollution and poverty are nowhere to be seen, automated systems take care of day-to-day affairs like sanitation and security, everybody seems to have ready access to all of the world's futuristic technology. This is the world that Yusei and his father dreamed of creating for mankind. And while the show never discusses the origins of Xyz summoning, there is some interesting lore from the real-world trading card game that fills in the gaps. The 2011 starter deck, Dawn of the Xyz, states that Xyz monsters are made from antimatter and arrived in Yuma's universe through a black hole. Which is an odd coincidence, since Yusei happens to witness the creation of a new black hole in the last few episodes of 5Ds, and ends the series in possession of the device that Antinomy used to travel to that black hole. Plus, in Zexal, Heartland uses black holes as part of their sanitation department, shooting trash into space rather than letting it pile up on Earth. Throw in all the duel monsters and GX-era monsters and symbols that show up in the Duel Lodge during Zexal's first season, and I think we've gone way past coincidence. There are just too many clues tethering this show back to the original 3 to ignore. Sure, enough time has passed that people aren't commonly discussing the events of the 3 previous shows, but their histories are very much ingrained into the world of Zexal. And personally, I think that the show is so much more interesting if you look at it in the context of its predecessors. For example, near the end of Zexal, we learn that the universe was created when a divine dragon willed it and all of life into existence, but that the effort of creating reality ultimately caused that dragon's body to die and its soul to crash land on Earth, flooding the planet with an energy known as chaos, a power that has mostly disappeared by the time Zexal starts. But where did it go? Why did it disappear? Well, looking at it in the context of duel monsters, I'd say that chaos is the power that the Pharaoh sealed away when he banished the Shadow Games from our world. Egyptian sorcerers were harnessing their chaos to bind monster spirits to their will, and nearly brought about the end of the world, which is why the Pharaoh was ultimately forced to seal that power away. Sure, you could still use existing chaos items, like the Millennium items or the Shadow Charms, in order to initiate Shadow Games, but ordinary people lost the ability to just do magic once chaos was sealed away. Flash forward a few thousand years, and 5Ds ends with Yusei and the Signers preventing the end of the world, and with Yusei taking over the development of Project Moment for New Domino City. The show always frames synchro summoning and momentum reactors as an allegory for real-world nuclear energy, which currently holds the distinction of having the highest capacity factor of any non-theoretical energy source. But by the time of Zexal, the nuclear metaphor has been replaced by antimatter, which currently holds the distinction of having the highest capacity factor of any theoretical energy source, suggesting that nuclear synchro energy was phased out for safer and more efficient antimatter XC's reactors. And Zexal doesn't just tie a line back to the original 3 Yu-Gi-Oh! Shows, it also sets up some pretty important plot points that future shows will tackle later. In Zexal, Yuma gets caught up in the renewed war between Astral World and Varian World. Both sides race to get a hold of the Numeron Code, a duel monsters card containing the infinite power of the Creator Dragon, and the series ends with the character Astral using the Numeron Code to reunite Astral World and Varian World, an action that we're warned has allowed the power of chaos to return to Earth, and which will have grave consequences. A lot of fans have criticized the show for failing to explain what those consequences were, but I actually think we did get our answers in the very next show, Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5. Throughout this series, the main characters are constantly jumping back and forth between dimensions that correspond to the different summoning methods in the game. So there's a standard dimension, a fusion dimension, a synchro dimension, and an Xyz dimension. And each one resembles the show and the time period in which that summoning method was mainly used. So there are a lot of familiar characters like Alexis Rhodes and Aster Phoenix in the fusion dimension, and most of them tie back to Duel Academy. Special cards and plot points from GX show up again here after years of being absent from the anime. And then the Synchro and Xyz dimensions resemble 5Ds and Zexal in the same way. But then at the end of Arc 5, we learn that all of the different dimensions used to be a single, unified dimension. And that is when it all made sense. The original dimension that we see in flashbacks in Arc 5 is the continuity of all the shows prior to Arc 5. Duel Monsters, GX, 5Ds, and Zexal all happened in the original dimension. Everything from the Numeron Dragon creating the universe to Astral using the Numeron Code and inadvertently allowing chaos energy to return to mankind. That all happened in one timeline. But what happened next? Well, at the end of Arc 5, we learn about a duelist who had no magical items or special technology, who fused with the spirit of his 4 ace monsters and threatened to destroy the world. A duelist named Zark. Zark is the consequence of Astral using the Numeron Code at the end of Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal. By unsealing the power locked away by the Pharaoh, Astral set the stage for the end of the world. In the end, the battle against Zark grew so intense that reality itself split apart, causing it to reform as the 4 different dimensions. And this is the first and only point where the Yu-Gi-Oh! Timeline actually splits. But it doesn't branch off at a single point like a normal time travel story. This is Yu-Gi-Oh! Of course it's much weirder than that. It actually splits into pieces, and each piece keeps on growing, creating 4 new timelines, all set during different periods in history, but all happening at the same time. But why didn't history just happen the same way that it did last time? Why was the fusion dimension so different from what we saw in GX? And the same goes for the other 3. Well, there are 3 big reasons. The first is that there seem to be some characters noticeably absent from their respective time periods. Where are Yugi, Jaden, Yusei, and Yuma in the new dimensions? These were major players in history, and they're all just gone. Secondly, on the day that the new dimensions were created, 2 new babies were born in each one that had not existed in the original timeline. Yuya Sakaki and Zuzu Boyle were born in the standard dimension, Yuri and Selena in the fusion dimension, Yugo and Rin in synchro, and Yuto and Lulu in the Xyz dimension. These 4 boys were reincarnations of Zark, with each child possessing a fraction of his soul, while the girls were reincarnations of Rei, the duelist who finally defeated Zark before reality split. And of course, the third and most obvious reason that the dimensions ended up being different is that Arc 5 antagonist Leo Akiba derailed history when he started jumping between dimensions and starting wars. For all intents and purposes, Leo Akiba is a time travel from the future who jumped back and forth between the different dimensions and their different periods in history, bringing new technology with him. Where the standard dimension started out with nothing but the original Kaiba Corp era dual discs, Leo Akiba used his knowledge of the future in order to create his Solid Vision dual discs. This pollution of history caused things to play out in a fundamentally different way, where the fusion, synchro, and Xyz dimensions are fundamentally unrecognizable from their original
Valord
versions of
coward.
history.
Not gonna lie, my brain is melting at all of this.
It's pretty fucking wild.
Of his spirit in order to
This is about a fucking card game. We've had multiple wars, a genocide, time travel. Was this about a fucking card game?
to resurrect himself, only to be thwarted by the heroes from all 4 dimensions and his old foe Rei. This jumbled.
Fuck, I don't know. Does the timeline of Pokemon get this wild? Or is it just like Ash just going in one straight line, you know? Finally able to win himself a championship with his 13-year-old wins championship with his 20 years of experience.
Of reality again, causing the standard dimension to be recreated as the pendulum dimension, and Zark's essence is trapped and later purified in a baby. It's a little weird. And that, my fellow duelists, is the complete Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime timeline. A magic dragon created the universe and cried itself to death. Its tears gave magic to the earth. People spent a few thousand years playing cards with one another until time exploded. And one guy started an interdimensional war and blew time up again, which was ultimately fine because an evil baby smiled. It's a beautiful, wonderful series, and anyone who says otherwise is wrong. As ridiculous as that description was, I feel like these clues fit together well enough that this may have actually been intentional on someone's part on the writing team. We'll never know. Konami has long since made it clear that they don't want to be bothered with an ever-expanding continuity, and now that the anime is being produced by an entirely different studio, who knows what rights to what characters are jumbled up where. But I like to believe that there was one die-hard fan of the show on the staff who was like, "No! I will make sure there's one interconnected continuity!" Or is that just me? Why aren't you paying me for this, Konami? So, that is a connected timeline for the Duel Monsters through Arc 5 animes. But to include Brains, Sevens, Go Rush, and the various manga projects, we're going to have to move from a mildly compelling game of connect the dots to some leap of logic speculation. The story of Playmaker and the Link Brain simulation is a weird one to fit into the series chronology, and after more research on the subject than I care to admit, I found one small detail. A tiny clue, one crumb of information that has me absolutely convinced that it does. Reveal trap card! Dimensional Barrier! Alright, let me explain. Dimensional Barrier is a trap card first released in the Arc 5 era booster pack, Invasion Vengeance. Its effect allows the user to declare a type of monster and negate the summoning and effects of that type of monster for the rest of the turn. Most importantly, the allowable monster types are Fusion, Synchro, Exceed, Pendulum, and Ritual, implying that Ritual energy was mostly isolated to one little dimension of its own alongside the rest of the summoning powers. But even if we accept this card that's never appeared in the anime at face value, how do we get from a Ritual dimension exists to playmakers playing in the Ritual dimension? Well, to start, there's simple process of elimination. Vrains just doesn't seem to fit with any of the dimensions established in Arc 5, with the technology seen throughout the show appearing to be both more sophisticated in some areas, but less in others, suggesting that industrial development occurred on a completely separate track from those worlds seen previously. Even the game of dual monsters has regressed. In the first 5 series, duelists wishing to perform fusion, synchro, and exceed summoning were able to do so relatively uninhibited, so long as they had the necessary cards to pull it off. But Vrains introduces some pretty specific limitations on advanced summoning, namely that players couldn't summon more than one fusion, synchro, or exceed monster without the aid of newly introduced link monsters. Why? Well, it makes sense when you consider this in terms of energy. In Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds, we learned that dueling energy, or NRD as they call it in the dub, is a measurable phenomenon, something which Arc 5 reaffirms when the Leo Corporation begins covertly tracking duelists by monitoring the power output their cards generate when played. And while duelists are able to perform each summoning method in any dimension, it is suggested that each type of energy is limited outside of its home dimension, meaning that fusion
Valord
energy,
coward.
and therefore the
I'll
ability
give
to
you
fusion
my inner
summon,
D girl.
probably has some limits outside of the fusion dimension. Ditto for Synchro and Exceeds. Enter Link Monsters. Playmaker and the other Link Vrains duelists frequently refer to the process of Link summoning as the closing of a circuit, which is important because of how they facilitate the use of extra deck monsters. An electrical circuit is simply an interconnection network that creates a path for an electrical current. Or, put simply, a circuit conducts energy from point A to point B. While there might be a deficit of fusion, synchro, and exceed energy in the network of Link Vrains, duelists can pass more readily available power through their Link monsters and onto their other advanced monsters. But what's the one advanced monster type that doesn't require a Link monster to come onto the main monster field? Ritual monsters. There is no restriction on ritual summoning, and Vrains represented something of a ritual renaissance for the franchise. The show features several instances of ritual summoning, the most of any series since the original Duel Monsters. 33 of the 114 ritual monsters in the game, or just under 30%, were released during the show's first run in Japan, and the Link Monster card art looks kinda like ritual summoning's edgelord younger brother, which kinda makes sense. After all, what is a Link Monster? It's a computer program. We see Playmaker assemble them by manipulating data storms throughout the series, and his series of Talker Ace monsters are all based on programming protocols. But what is a program? It's a repeatable series of processes that perform a specific task. And what's a ritual? Archaeologically speaking, it's a series of processes that perform a specific task. Sacrifice 99 villagers and you get 7 Millennium items. Tribute a Karibo to a fierce knight and you get a Blackluster soldier. Compile 4 sub-programs and you get a Firewall dragon. Intelligent enough machines can digitally replicate ritualistic behavior, and suddenly, Link Vrains has the ability to source out additional power for the anemic summoning methods. Speaking of Link monsters, the show's first season doesn't feature any advanced summoning mechanics other than Link summoning, but right off the bat in episode 2 of season 2, Playmaker performs the show's first non-Link special summoning. And who does he call forth? The Dark Magician-inspired ritual monster, Cyburst Magician. A few episodes later, we meet Soulburner's Salamangrate Emerald Eagle before seeing Cyburst Magician again. This means ritual monsters beat fusion, synchro, and exceed monsters to the screen not 1, not 2, but 3 times in this particular series. But there is a hole in our theory. The other 4 dimensions each resemble a specific period in history. A period where their preferred summoning method was at its height, meaning that a ritual dimension should theoretically exist when ritual summoning was at its peak. But when was ritual summoning at its height? Well, we don't really know, but we see the most instances of ritual summoning during the Duel Monsters era of the show, particularly during the Duelist Kingdom and pre-Battle City arcs, suggesting that a ritual dimension would likely be centered around this period. Similar to the world we saw in the original anime, but different. And wouldn't you know, we've already seen a world that's similar to the original anime, but different. In the film Dark Side of Dimensions, we see Kaiba unveil a new boss monster, the ritual-based Blue Eyes Chaos Max Dragon. Moreover, the film's antagonist, Aigami, introduces a brand new, never-before-seen summoning method, the curiously named Dimension Summoning Method. But the most important thing to take note of in this film are the new dual discs that Kaiba unveils during the movie. Blue hologram projectors that store card data as software, so that duelists no longer require physical cards to play the game. These dual discs are functionally identical to the ones seen across Link Brains. Soul Technologies is widely distributing the technology that Seto Kaiba invented, implying that Vrains takes place after Darkseid. They exist on a single timeline, a timeline when this portion of history split off and became the Ritual Dimension, and where history played out differently from what we saw in the original series. Sure, things are similar. There's a Yugi and a Kaiba who were rivals and who saved the world. But this Yugi and this Kaiba are not the same as this Yugi and this Kaiba. They're actually the same as this Yugi and Kaiba. Yu-Gi-Oh! Creator Kazuki Takahashi, who served as the film's sole credited screenwriter, has definitively stated that the movie serves as a sequel to his original manga and not the animated series produced by Studio Gallop. For anime-only fans, this is why Kaiba seems to have forgotten being present for the ceremonial duel between Yugi and Atem. In the manga, he wasn't there. Kaiba disappeared after the Battle City arc, and remained absent until the Darkseid prequel special, Transcend Game. And that, fellow duelists, brings us to the crux of this theory. Today, I propose that the Ritual Dimension is no more than the Yu-Gi-Oh! Manga timeline, a version of history that was created after the rise of the Supreme King Zark and the fall of the original dimension. As the dimension set in the earliest period in history, and with no Zark fragments running around to fundamentally alter the course of events, this timeline would have continued on, moving into a GX era, then a 5Ds, then on to a Zexal, before reaching a new version of the Arc 5 period, where Zark never rose to power, allowing history to move on to the era of Link Vrains. And this theory is given weight by the fact that Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains is the first and only Yu-Gi-Oh! Series not to feature a companion manga, with the print version skipping it entirely in favor of publishing an adaptation of Yu-Gi-Oh! 7s instead. But why would we need a manga if this is, in reality, the story of the manga? But for those of you who are familiar with the manga versions of these stories, you might well be asking yourself why the stories presented in print are so different from the ones seen on screen. After all, the GX manga also tells the story of Jade and Yuki's first year at Duel Academy, but rather than facing off against the Shadow Riders and the Sacred Beasts, Jaden is forced to contend with the dual spirit Trigadia, a creature whose Ka was created from a survivor of the massacre that created the Millennium Items. The 5D's manga doesn't feature Zone's apocalyptic future or time travel elements, but instead sees Yusei Fudo face off against the Goodwin brothers to prevent the Festival of Destiny, an ancient ritual used to resurrect the ultimate god. And Arc 5 is a time travel story that sees hero from the future, Yuya Sakaki, come back in time to seduce his own grandmother. Not making that up. But why? Why are the stories and narratives in the Ritual Dimension so different from the ones seen?
Well, I mean, it played out pretty well for Fry.
In the original dimension? Well, it all comes down to one small change for one character. Kaiba. In the original dimension, Seto Kaiba was present for the ceremonial duel between Yugi and the Pharaoh. He witnessed the Pharaoh bring out all three
Valord
Egyptian
coward.
god cards, the power
Nah,
that
sorry,
Kaiba
fucking
himself
what?
had sought.
Over.
And the Pharaoh still lost to Yugi. Kaiba's rivalry with the Pharaoh was put to rest because he saw for himself.
Well, I guess they gotta keep bringing out the stuffs. We've been pretty wild so far, sir. What wild shit can we have next? We've had war and genocide, interdimensional warlords, time travel. What should we do next? Interdimensional incest. Ah, very good, sir. Very good. Many cards we will sell. Yes, very good.
Yugi was the true king of games. But in the ritual dimension, that never happened. Kaiba wasn't present for the final duel of the story. He didn't set foot into the Pharaoh's tomb until the events of Darkside. His rivalry with the Pharaoh was never given closure, and so he began to obsessively search for a way to bring Atem back from the land of the dead. Where his anime counterpart moved on with his life and began projects in space exploration and renewable energy, the manga Kaiba dedicated himself to getting his final rematch with his lost rival. And at the end of Dark Side of Dimensions, we see him hurl himself into the land of the dead. To me, this scene always read as though Kaiba knew that this would be a one-way trip. When his little brother worried that he might not come back, Kaiba evaded the subject and left everything in Mokuba's hands. When he reaches the afterlife, his body began to dissolve as he abandoned his crashed dimension ship. Seto Kaiba was willing to die if it meant proving to himself that he really was the best of the best, and his death would have changed everything we know about the story of Yu-Gi-Oh! After Duel Monsters. Who orchestrated the events of the GX?
Kaiba's fucking wild, man. I'm gonna go into the land of the dead to have a duel with Yugi, some guy I had a rivalry with back in high school.
In 5D's animes, Seto Kaiba. He founded the Duel Academy to study the mysteries surrounding the game of Duel Monsters, and had a direct hand in multiple aspects
Valord
of the Light
coward.
of Destruction and Dark
Holy
Dimension
shit, man, this gets crazier
Kaiba
and
Corporation
crazier.
was responsible for
Yeah,
Momentum,
buddy.
the destruction of Domino City, and the construction of New Domino City. But what if Kaiba had never been there? Would any of those stories have taken place? Probably not. Adventurers like Jate Yuki and Yusei Fudo would still have been drawn to greatness, going out and forging their own stories regardless of the circumstances around them. But without Kaiba there to kick off the events that shaped their lives, the journeys they found themselves on would have been entirely different. Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal, a story where Kaiba's influence is much less pronounced, is coincidentally the only manga adaptation that retains the same core plot as its anime counterpart. And of course, the events of Arc 5 would have been completely different, as this is a dimension where Zark was never born, meaning that the Yuya, Yuto, Yugo, and Yuri seen within the events of the Arc 5 manga would be natural-born humans, free from the corruption of Zark's influence, and born as brothers within a single dimension, because the ritual dimension never repeated the events that caused the original dimension to divide in the first place. In many ways, this world is what the original dimension should have been. A single, unbroken universe that carries on where its predecessor failed. But what about Yu-Gi-Oh! 7s and Go Rush, you might be asking? Well, from the first episode of 7s, I think it's pretty obvious that this show takes place after Brains. In the premiere episode, protagonist Yuga Odo creates the new Rush Duel format, as he felt that the game could
Look at this Goober. What are you doing with your normal hair? You almost look like a regular person.
too structured and restricted, mirroring the sentiments that fans all over the world had about the Master Rules format implemented during the Brains era of the game. After Yuga accidentally forced the world to adopt the Rush Duel format, the Link Brains simulation would have been incompatible and fallen out of prevalence. Then comes Yu-Gi-Oh! Go Rush, which is a direct sequel to 7's. Main characters Yui and Yuamu Oga are related to Yuga, and the world is still utilizing Yuga's Rush Duel format. And where the franchise goes from here? I guess we're just gonna have to wait and see what comes with time.
Yeah?
Time is a strange thing.
I just watched a
It's
movie.
been almost 3 years since I started
Liam
making
Neeson?
Yu-Gi-Oh! videos.
Hmm?
Those of
In
you
the
who
Land of
follow my
Saints and
channel
Sinners,
have probably
it's called.
noticed that I
It's
haven't
an Irish
uploaded much
movie.
content
Oh,
recently.
yeah?
Not a big
Back in
Hollywood
January,
production.
I was
Okay.
bombarded
But
with a
it's
series
good.
of
It's
copyright
set
attacks by
74
NAS,
IRA
the company that
assassins
produced Yu-Gi-Oh! Up until
all in this little
2019.
Hmm?
I wasn't the
where
only
they had a
channel
map
to be
of
hit.
Ireland in the post
Dylan
office.
from Yu-Gi-Oh!
And an
Everything
arrow
and a
says,
few
"You are
others
here,
were targeted as well,
why?"
despite the fact that
Okay.
all of our
Because
content
it's so remote.
satisfies the
Okay.
requirements of fair
It's good.
use.
It's a good movie. Good movie.
Most of us have contested these
Not
claims, and I
much
believe
time,
that most of the
Yeah,
content
alright.
has been restored. But the whole thing has left a bad taste in my mouth. YouTubers like us help to grow the Yu-Gi-Oh! Brand. We keep fans engaged between releases and attract old fans back. I I can't tell you how many people have reached out to me to say, I stopped watching after 5Ds, but your videos made me want to go back and watch the other shows. And to see my business and the businesses of my fellow YouTubers be targeted in this way, it was really hurtful. So making this video was much harder than it should have been. And between that, some personal changes in my life, and the loss of series creator Kazuki Takahashi, I think I'm ready to be done for a while. This isn't the end of the channel. I do intend to start making videos across a wide variety of franchises. I hope you'll all join me in the next chapter of this channel. This isn't the end of the channel. I do intend to start making videos across a wide variety of
Doctor Who,
variety of
Star Wars, Zelda,
franchises.
and Marvel.
I hope
You don't have a very good lineup, mate. I guess Zelda, you could do fine. But yeesh. All those other ones, yeesh. I guess Doctor Who's long enough history. There's a lot to cover before they completely shit the bed in the modern
Valord
day and
coward.
age.
This guy is going to be basic as fuck. Over.
There's a lot of Zelda shit you can do, but oh, Marvel. Modern cinematic Marvel. Star Wars, there's stiff competition in Star Wars.
you'll all join me in the next chapter of this channel. But if you were just here for the Yu-Gi-Oh, thanks for the good times. It has truly been one of the greatest artistic pleasures of my career, making videos for you. If you do plan on sticking around, why don't you let me know what franchises I should overanalyze next in the comments below. Then, hit the subscribey thing to see if I do it. Everybody stay safe and...
Now, power crept is a term.
Here we go, let's watch some. This can't play fucking Forbidden Warriors. Forbidden Memories. Also, he's a kangaroo, I'm pretty sure.
Hey everyone, Jono here. Last run we went out trick-or-treating with our zombie deck, and were successful in beating the game and reclaiming our stolen candy. So let's give a star chip victory to zombies. Just as soon as our great mammoth of Goldfine lays waste to this Cosmo Queen. There we go. Now, a large number of you in the comments have been throwing a variety of types at me, namely Pyro, Machines, Beast Warriors females, and the occasional Exodia request. Beast Warrior has been pushed up to the top of that list, but for good reason. Brent Tenkage, if you're out there watching, my sincerest sympathies for your loss. This Beast Warrior video goes out in memory to your friend Grey Vested, and his appreciation for Centaurs. I will try not to disappoint. So with all that said, let's jump straight into the type analysis. Beast Warriors are an iconic type in Yu-Gi-Oh! There are a total of 14 monsters in Forbidden Memories, with 4 available to the player in the starting deck. The remaining 7 are unlocked during the story, with 3 being locked away behind a pocket station and a ritual summon. Here is an overview of the rules. I've made some erratas to them for better understanding. Our deck must consist of only a single monster type. I've split the trading rule into 2. Trading for the initial deck is allowed. What this means is I can access the full pool of initial cards using 2 memory cards to create the starting deck. This ensures that every duel from the kit goes with a single type, and also reflects how a large majority of us played this game as kids. As for the remainder, they're pretty much the same.
Not a fucking goblin voice! This is what every fucking redheaded in Australia sounds like! Are you fucking making fun of me, cunt? Don't fucking stab ya!
With the small addition down the bottom, free duels must also follow the above rules. It's something I've always done, but not mentioned. Now, with all that aside, our starting deck looks like this. There isn't much to work with, so we have a few equipped cards fill in the spaces. And with that, let's begin the story.
Millennium Egypt, an ancient civilization, home to many arcane beast warriors. It is a land governed by the base king and his high mages, all descendants of Centaurus himself. Confident in their might, they watch over Millennium Egypt, protecting and guiding all mythical beast folk, especially the descendants of Celestia, the My Little Ponies. It is here that our story begins, witnessed through the eyes of the Beast King Prince.
What's going on?
Beast Prince here. I'm sorry, I can't keep that accent going. How's that for some background into this adventure? Without further delay, we kick off this story by challenging this sentient chuck swipe to a duel. Now, I've never really played with Beast Warriors in any Yu-Gi-Oh game. That also goes for the TCG. Well, not counting Light Swans. Which is strange given that a good chunk of the iconic monsters from the anime are all Beast Warriors. Beaver Warrior, Hitotsumi Giants, Battleox, all Beast Warriors. Looking at Forbidden Memories, I'd consider them to be a rather powerful type for just the early game, maybe at least until the Mid-World Tournament. Being very noob friendly, aside from Mountain Warrior, all their monsters start from 1000 attack onwards, increasing in power in line with story progression. We'll cover more on that as the game progresses, but for now, we're on to our final turn. With a trusty Raigeki for the win, an attack for game, we Anywho Simon into oblivion, and we win. We got a Queen's double. Guess what? First try. No surprise there. Over to the duel arena, we say hi to Tina Sparkle, one of the descendants of Princess Celestia. Being the great friends that we are, we sip some tea and play a nice game of cards. For the select few of you in the comments who have that burning question to ask me, Pinkie Pie is the best pony. Don't friggin' at me. Anywho too, back to the duel. Our starting deck is very lean on monsters. 12 monsters in total. Ignoring the BS that was our Sea Serpent video, this is the lowest starting monster count we've had so far for a non-Pocket Station deck. 12 monsters is a crap load better than 3, so I'll count it as a blessing. However, this does also mean that I've needed to pad the deck out to fill in the spaces with junk cards. Not ideal, but what can you do? We should be fine for the early game story. Speaking of, I think we're already at our final turn. No Raigeki this time, but we're going to hammer away for the win. Attack 1, Attack 2, and Attack 3 for game. We won! And we got an Uguchi. And this took one try. Concluding our tea party with Tina Sparkle, we must satiate our thirst for victory and take on more beast folk. Starting with Villager 1. According to Yu-Gi-Oh! Falsebound Kingdom, this guy's name is Giselle. Mind blown with that knowledge. Anywho, number 3, back to our Beast Warrior analysis. Beast Warriors are the only type compatible with 2 field spells, those being Forest and Meadow. This is likely because their typing is literally Beast and Warrior. Alternating field spells will become very beneficial to us in the later parts of the game, especially when Warriors start to become the meta in terms of raw attack power. What we really don't want to see when facing the final 6 is us dropping a Sogan and then the opponent dropping a Gate Guardian. That is not fun. With respect to equip cards, the signature equip card for Beast Warriors is Axe of Despair. You've seen me use it a few times already. What is also neat is the sheer composition of Beast Warriors. A lot of the equip cards in Forbidden Memories activate based on card features, so having a lot of horns, fangs and swords is really going to work to our benefit. I'll recap the equip cards later. It's about that time of the duel where we win. Getting through our opponent's turn, we drop a Raigeki for the win and attack for game. We won! And we got an armed ninja. And of course, this duel took one try. On to the next Cadbury furry friend we go. This time, we're up against Villager 2, whose name is actually Malai Ruka, according to Falsebound Kingdom. Seriously, what was with that game? Anywho, number 4. Back to our Beast Warrior analysis. Unlike some of the other monster types, Beast Warriors have no fusion with their primary types. The Beast Warriors that I'm aware of that fuse all do so due to having a secondary typing, or fuse with a specific non-Beast Warrior card for a bespoke fusion. For those of you unaware, certain cards in Yu-Gi-Oh! Forbidden Memories actually have 2 types. The primary type is what's listed on the card itself. As for the secondary type, those vary depending on each monster. Not all of them have it. This is why in my zombie video, you saw me using Curse of Dragon. Though its primary type is Dragon, it has a secondary type of zombie. I think this was due to one of its translations being Bone Dragon. Speaking of people completely boned, we defeated our opponent. We won a Menschmol zombie, and this took one duel. Now, our final opponent is the Old Mountain Troll. He hasn't got a name. He's a forgotten character. He hasn't appeared in any other games either, I think. Now, I think I've covered off all there is to know regarding Beast Warriors in Forbidden Memories. Now, I usually record commentary for these videos alongside my gameplay, so in terms of how well this deck is going to do, I actually don't know. If I were to make an early prediction, I would place this deck in maybe equal to or less than zombies. My reasoning for that is due to the 2 strongest Beast Warrior cards being inaccessible to the player without a pocket station. This means that our attack will cap off at 1900. However, we do have access to more equipped cards and more 1800 attack monsters, which might tip the scales back in our favour. Let's see how we go. Before people start to jump in, Rabbit Horseman. Yes, he is a fusible card in this game, but Mystic Horseman is not a Beast Warrior, for some bizarre reason, so we don't have access to that card either. So there's the inside scoop of my brain on that one. We've reached the final turn of this duel. We drop a Raigeki for the win and attack for game. We won! And we got a Change Slime, and we did this in one duel. Having come out of the duel arena as a champion, it's time for a cutscene. The warrior elites have gathered in the town square in preparation for their next campaign. They heard a wild note over water and cloud of a man riding horses in the sky without a license. Well, that's the way it's gotta be, little darling. So resuming our adventure, we witness a duel between a barbarian and an everlasting dragonkin. This is our mate Jono. It's very nice to see him wearing clothes again. And this slithery scaly dude is Seto, somebody who went a little too hard at Archdragon Peak. Mid-rolling away into the distance, we leave town and head back to the duel arena. Meeting up with Jono, we have another person to duel. For the casual players, you can actually skip this interaction altogether by saying no. All that happens is Seto walks into the room and you commence the duel with him. But hey, not really going to work for our purposes, because we have to duel every opponent. As it says in my very convoluted rules. Excuse the squawking in the background, that's just Tiny. She makes noise every time she hears a lorikeet outside. Anywho, number 4, it's time for our first card trivia. This time we're going to focus on Mountain Warrior, the weakest beast warrior in the game. Mountain Warrior appeared in the Yu-Gi-Oh manga. Joey used this card against his duel with Taya. Yes, that's right, Taya dueled a few times in the manga. I think she had a 100% win rate as well to boot. As for the physical card game, this card was printed in the OCG starter boxes as a common card and has not been reprinted since. Let's pause for now. We land our final attack against Jono and we win. We won a Yamato Dragon Scroll, and we beat this in one duel. Having heard the commotion from our duel, the Queen Chrysalis wannabe bursts into the duel arena, looking for an easy win. Buddy, if there's anything to know about Yu-Gi-Oh, easy wins are for chads, not scrubs, and you're looking kinda spongy right now. Kicking off our next duel against Seto, I actually didn't finish the card trivia for Mountain Warrior, so we're gonna pick up where we left off. Now, there is a bit of odd trivia surrounding Mountain Warrior. Well, an alternate counterpart to him. In the 2001 second national tournament in Japan, the top 3 victors all had caricatures of themselves printed on custom cards to commemorate their placements in the tournament. Third place finalist was a guy named Toshi Tomohiro, who had a custom Mountain Warrior card created. The card was called Tomohiro the Mountain Warrior. This card is an illegal card in the TCG. Illegal cards are unable to be used in official tournaments. They are a completely separate list to the current ban list. The card text of Mountain Warrior reads, "Missing out on a win is frustrating. Next time, aim at being the champ." Which is probably the most official burn anyone can think of. Speaking of, we drop a Raigeki for the win and attack for game. Seto goes down and we win a Yamato Dragon Scroll. Again. With our fight over in the duel arena, we are rewarded once more with the ability to go outside. Waving goodbye to our friends, we make our way back to the palace. With our night over at the duel arena, it's time we head home, chaperoned by the Blue Sponge. Retreating to his chamber, Simon begins drafting a letter. Dear Pharaoh, you still ain't called or wrote. I hope you have a chance. I ain't mad, I just think it's messed up that you don't duel your fans. If you didn't want to duel me outside of the palace, you didn't have to, but you could have heard the lecture I had for you. That's my whole job, man. It's only needed 6 minutes to be told. I waited in the scorching desert for you for 4 hours and you just said no. That's pretty crappy, man. I'm like your freaking idol. I just want to be liked by you, man. You hate me more than I do. See, I'm just like you in a way. I never knew how to duel neither. I used to always shit on my opponents too and then go take a breather. I can relate to what you say in your duel logs, so when I have a crappy shift, I drift away and take them on. Cause I don't really got much else, so that stuff helps when I'm depressed. I even got a new game.
See, I tell you these guys' videos are pretty good.
Well, with your name across the quest. Sometimes I even duel myself just to see how bad it feels. It's like adrenaline, the grind is such a sudden rush for me. See, every time you duel is real, and I respect it cause I can tell it. Jafar is jealous cause I talk about you 24/7. But he don't know you like I do, Pharaoh, no one does. He don't know what it's like for people like us grinding up. You gotta write me, man. I'll be the biggest fan you ever lose. Sincerely yours, Simon. P.S. We shall duel together too.
What the hell was that? Anywho, number 5. Battle cries roar throughout the palace. Emerging from his chamber in a panic, Simon is confronted by gentle Jafar. Wow, indeed. Be sure to save me a piece of that hot pie. Our story continues once more through the eyes of the prince.
With the literal earth shaking beneath us, female Mokuba runs off and gets captured by Seto. Doing what school has taught us, we ignore the bully and walk outside. Don't worry, I'm sure she'll be fine. Face to face with the Dragonborn again, he interrogates us for the plot device. There it is, in all its millennium glory. Simon seems to be in a bit of trouble. Well, better run away. In our escape attempt, we are intercepted by General Jafar. He gives us the choice of challenging him to a duel or accepting defeat and getting our scrawny butt cheese grated against those abs of his. Either way, this is sounding like a fun time. Now, we're going to attempt to defeat him, but I'm not hopeful. If we're able to get a B, C, or D rank against him, he will drop Neko Gal number 2, the strongest monster we're able to obtain with this run without using a pocket station. Given that the strongest card in our deck is a measly 1200 attack, I'm not too hopeful for a first try win. It's probably for the best. It gives us a chance to try this deck out as it is for the World Tournament coming up. What I will say for this duel is that Zero the Mont is an absolute beast of a monster. Hands down, my favourite fiend in this game. Getting our butts thoroughly kicked by Jafar, I still relent and decide to pop off a Raigeki. It's not for the win, because you technically can't win this duel. So it's just Raigeki for game, and Haishin attacks. We lose. That's okay, we're meant to. Losing to Jafar, he is grabbed by the blue serviette, and we're reminded that we need to progress the actual plot of the story. Smashing our plot device, we are sucked into the void. Dear Stan, I meant to write to you sooner. Nah, I'm just kidding, we're not going through that. This white boy can't rap. Phasing into another reality, we find ourselves at yet another card tournament. According to the current date, this is sometime after YCS Richmond. Since I'm out of the TCG, according to the Google searches, an Unchained deck ended up winning that one. Unchained, wow. Guess they got some support after I left. Anywho, number 6, we're on to our first duel of the tournament. It's against Rex Raptor, no surprise there. For the next few duels of the early games of the tournament, I'm going to be firing off some trivia. This is sort of that point in the game where it decides to throw you a bone and lure you into a false sense of security, before slapping you right down where you belong when you start to hunt for the Millennium items. With that said, the card we're going to be focusing on for this round of trivia will be the card Solitude. Solitude was released in the second booster pack of the OCG and has not been reprinted since. Nor has it been released in the TCG either. This card has also made no anime or manga appearances. It only exists in the video games, stemming all the way from Dark Duel Stories up until Yu-Gi-Oh! World Championship 2006. And that's all there is to this card. Not much more to say. So we kick off a Raigeki for the win, and we attack for game. Rex goes down, and we win Kage Ningen. And to no one's surprise, we did this in one duel. On to the next duel. Wherever there is a Rex in this universe, you will definitely find a Weevil very close by. And that's who our next opponent will be. Starting off the duel strong, the card we summon is called One Who Hunts Souls. Ironically, it's going to be the trivia for this duel, so let's jump right into it. One Who Hunts Souls is a Beast Warrior card that debuted in the OCG as part of Booster Pack 2, and was later re-released in the reprinted Booster Pack 1. The card itself is based off the Ichthyocentavros, or Ichthyocentaurs as it's pronounced in English. These are a species of centaur with a torso of a human, front legs of a horse, and the tailed half of a fish. Don't quote me, but I think one is also depicted on the Pergamon altar, for those history buffs out there. Speaking of things that are history, we're just about up to the final turn. Like with all good game RNG, we draw a Raigeki for the win, activate it, and then attack for game. We win, and we got a basic insect, and that's a basic duelist down in one try. Our next duel is up against Mai, which is fantastic. The reason I say that is because Mai drops our next two Beast Warrior cards. At any power rank she can drop both Beaver Warrior and Battle Locks. As for the rest of our Beast Warrior cards, aside from Haishin dropping Neko Gal number 2, we'll need to wait all the way up until Jono 2 to start obtaining cards around 1800 attack. And when I say Jono 2, I mean A ranking Jono 2. if we're not able to A rank with our current deck, we'll need to hold off till the high majors, assuming we're able to beat those as well. Having new monsters in our deck also means that our equip cards start becoming a bit more consistent. You've probably noticed me wasting a few of them over the last few turns. Not much I can do. The compatibility with our current monster set isn't the greatest. Every Beast Warrior card, for the most part, is compatible with Axe of Despair, Beast Fang, and Mystical Moon. Everything else like Dark Energy, Horde of Light, Sword of Dark Destruction, a bit hit and miss. So as we start getting the stronger monsters, the consistency around the cards will start getting better. Out of sheer coincidence. With that aside, we're out to the final turn. You seen what I did. We get a Droll Bird, beat this in one try, and of course our win condition is Raigeki. No surprise there. Now, before I grind for these last two Beast Warrior cards, I decide to challenge Bandit Keith. Simple reason is, he's not that difficult an opponent. Plus, I sorta had some momentum going, and I didn't feel like stopping to collect some cards. So with that said, it's on to the trivia. This time we're looking at Beaver Warrior. Strap yourselves in, people, there's a fair amount of lore on this guy. Beaver Warrior was released in the TCG in the Legend of Blue Eyes Dragon pack, and has since been reprinted again in Dark Beginnings 1, Starter Deck Yu-Gi Evolution, and Yugi's Legendary decks. In the OCG land that is Japan, it was printed across 9 different sets. Guess they like this card a bit more. In the anime, it first appeared in the Season 0 Death Tea duel between Yugi and Kaiba. It reappeared later again in Episode 1 of Duelist Kingdom, and the many other episodes following on from that. As for Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, it appeared in Episode 34 in the duel between Jaden and Kaiba-Man, and lastly in Episode 8 of Arc V when Henrietta was explaining the Institute of Dueling curriculum. With my timing on friggin' point, we defeated Bandit Keith, won a grand attack of Balgroth, and we beat this in one try. Time for some card grinding. Repeatedly dueling against Maya, we successfully win both a Beaver Warrior and a Battle Ox. To speed up grinding, I did use the 15 card mod. I've had an increase in midnight shifts and a general lack of breaks, so I hope you can all forgive me for using this to get this video out to you all quicker. Looking at our deck, Solitude and Mountain Warrior have been replaced with these two cards. Back to the tournament. Oh, and by tournament, I mean a cutscene with Shadi. Debating with Joey around what point in an apocalypse would it be okay to eat a horse, we're interrupted by Shadi, who says he has a voicemail from our ancient Egyptian ancestor. We grab onto the oddly shaped receiver shaft and start tripping back to the past. Our ancestor tells us that he's been sealed away, and the only way for him to be released is by gathering up all the elements of harmony, and conveniently placing them into several trading cards. Returning back to the present, we realize that we have no idea what an element of harmony looks like. So we channel our inner klepto and start stealing gold jewelry from people. That always seems to resolve 99% of life's problems, and I see no reason to divert from that path. Back to the game we go, and we're up against Shadi. Say it with me, kids. Shadi is a pushover. If you lose to him, you suck at this game, and you should immediately end your run right here, right now. Hooray for positive Tiger Mom reinforcement. Anywho, number 7, it turns out I didn't actually finish the card trivia for Beaver Warrior, so let's pick up where we left off. Beaver Warrior appears in the card artwork of Emergency Evasion, Scrum Force, and Pinpoint Guard. The Bandai version of this card actually had 1400 attack and 1800 defense. For those unaware, Bandai released a few sets of the OCG card game before Konami took over. And with that said, this brings us to our final turn. Triggering a trusty Raigeki for the win, we attack for game with Beaver Warrior. We win! And we got a Water Dragon Fairy, and we beat Shadi in one go. Absorbing his key and necklace into our cards, we go back to the card shop and save our game. Up next is Yami Bakura. Surprisingly, the next duelist that drops us a Beast Warrior card. Unfortunately, it's not overly useful, but a minor upgrade is still an upgrade. Yami Bakura drops Ogre of the Black Shadow, so we'll be sure to get that before we finish the World Tournament. The thing we need to remember with Yami Bakura is that he is a very defensive duelist. He usually summons monsters with... Alright, humbled with that one right there. What I was trying to say is that he is a very defensive duelist, and he usually puts things in defense mode, so as long as you have something over 2200 attack, you'll be fine. This is the first time I've actually seen him go on the offensive, but I think we've managed to pull ourselves back on our feet. With Hitotsumi Giant of all things, the next card in our set of trivia, so let's jump right into that. Hitotsumi Giant debuted in the Legend of Blue Eyes White Dragon pack, and was re-released in Dark Beginnings 1 and Duelist Pack Kaiba. In the OCG, it was printed in 6 sets. Looking at anime appearances, this was the first card summoned in episode 1 by Kaiba. Obvious trivia is obvious. We'll pause things there as we're now on our final turn of the duel. Triggering off a Raigeki for the win, we attack with Hitotsumi Giant and once more with Hitotsumi Giant. We win! Hourglass of Life. This took one try. And we steal this guy's necklace. Mine. We scurry once more back to the card shop and save our game. Our next opponent is Pegasus. He might be a problem. He does rock a few 2300 attack monsters, so if we don't get any good draws, there's a chance he could start ramping up against us in the early game. With our monster at 2200 attack points, we just need to hope that he doesn't summon a Crimson Sunbird or a Bakuri box. And there we go, humbled again. Thanks game. You never cease to amaze me. We fire off a precautionary Sogen just to get ourselves back on our feet, but it looks like it backfired because this guy's just, alright, that's great. That is great. Am I going to lose to Pegasus? 1, 2, okay, I think we're all good. Yep, redeemed. Now that we're back on our feet, I think it's time for the card trivia. We're picking things up again with Hitotsumi Giant. The card has made an appearance in 11 episodes of the anime, those being episodes 8, 9, 16, 26, 54, 99, 100, 101, 106, 109, and 159. It has not appeared in any other generations. Moving on to the card itself, this card makes an appearance in the artwork of Cost Down and Narrow Pass, and it also has a Cybern version of itself called Cybernetic Cyclopean. Lastly, continuing on with the mythology of Beast Warriors, Hitotsumi Giant is depicted as a Cyclops if you're Greek, or a one-eyed yokai if you're Japanese. And we're done. Pegasus goes down, we win a Miyotoko, and we did this in one duel, thankfully. Stealing this guy's eyeball, we catch our breath, and save our game once more. Our next opponent is the Yu-Gi-Oh version of Anuk Sunamun. We'll need to watch out for his Sea Serpent cards and any surprise twin-headed Thunder Dragons, because believe me, they are a genuine surprise, but not a fun one. So let's cross that when we get to it. Do you guys like trivia? Tough, because here's more of it. This time we're focusing on our strongest card thus far, Battleox. And boy oh boy is there a fair amount of it. This card debuted in the TCG as part of the starter deck Kaiba, and has only ever been reprinted as part of other starter decks. Those decks were Kaiba Reloaded, the demo deck of 2015, Legendary Decks 2, and the Duelist of Tomorrow's Speed Duel pack. I'll pause there for the card trivia. The next lot was going to be about its anime appearances, but that's going to take a bit of time. So instead, let's just watch our final turn. Dropping a Raigeki for the win, we attack once with Battleox, and we attack with the One Who Hunts Souls. We win. Anuk Sunamun goes down, and we get an Enchanting Mermaid. And we did this in one try. Stealing her necklace, we head back to the card shop. Saving our game for the last time in this tournament, we get ready to face off against Kaiba in the finals. Now Kaiba as a duelist is very problematic. He gave us a lot of grief in our ritual run, and I'm a bit concerned about our current deck strength. It should be fine so long as we don't cop a Blue Eyes White Dragon, or any other spell and trap shenanigans. So with all that being said, let's continue the trivia. Picking up where we left off, Battleox made an appearance in the pre-Duelist Kingdom anime. It was played in the first duel between Yugi and Kaiba. It never made it to the English episode 1 due to a continuity issue. There were additional duels that were cut from the English release, which included this card in its flashbacks. So to combat this, it was replaced with Hitotsumi Giant for the first duel. But never fear, Battleox appeared in a crap ton of episodes from this point on. So I'll have to give a recap of those in a later duel. For now, we power up our One Who Hunts Souls, attack the Giant Soldier of Stone, attack once with Battleox, and finish the game with another Battleox. We win, Kaiba goes down, and sadly this actually took 2 duels. Kaiba boy got us in the first duel by summoning a Blue Eyes White Dragon. Had nothing that can take that on. Anywho 9, we transfer the elements of harmony over to the Prince, which grants him the ability to break the seal which has imprisoned him. The elements also have the ability to do the complete reverse and seal someone away. Should have tested this on Simon first, but nonetheless, worked out in our favour, and we're back in Egypt. Let's check back in on our friends. I'm sure nothing bad happened while we were gone. What's that, Jono? The throne has been usurped? Oh, jeez. You leave work for one day and look what happens. Instead of checking to see if our immediate family is okay, we decide to play around the cards with our friends. Priorities, am I right? Anywho, number 10, we finally get to face off against Jono 2. Why am I so excited about this? Well, Jono 2 drops both Battlesteer and Garuzis if we're able to S or A power rank him. Easier said than done though, our deck is getting a bit power crept. With that said, let's continue with the Battleox trivia. Battleox appeared in episodes 16, 22, and 27 of Duelist Kingdom, and then later in episode 54, 70, and 108 of Battle City. In the Kybercorp Grand Prix, it featured in episode 185 and 194. As for Millennium World Arc, Priest Seto used this card against Thief King Bakura. Moving over to Capsule Monsters, it popped up in episode 8 in the Labyrinth, and then again in episode 7 of Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds. It was featured in a narrative from Paradox in the Bonds Beyond Time movie, and lastly, it appeared in episode 101 of Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal. Oofed, and that's Jono 2 down in one duel. We are now onto the My Littlest of Ponies, that is Tina 2. She shouldn't be too difficult, so with that being said, let's pick up where we left off with regards to trivia. Don't worry, hopefully this should be the last duel that we talk about Battleox. Moving back to the TCG, Battleox had a retrained counterpart called Enraged Battleox. I believe it was one of the very first retrain cards, debuting in Invasion of Chaos back in 2005. Outside of its retrain, Battleox also features on the card art of Triggered Summon, the Unselected One, Pixie King, New Recruit, and Excess Lesser Linker. The Bandai version of this card was a level 6 monster with 2400 attack points. I'll see if I can hunt down a photo of it. Jeez, it's giving me the your resistance is only making me harder vibes. Anywho, lastly, in keeping with all the Beast Warrior mythology, Battleox is a reference to the Minotaur, which seems to be a common theme for all Beast Warrior cards, being based off Greek mythology. I find that pretty interesting. I would have thought they would have done them off yokais. But hey, that's Japan for ya. And this is a Raigeki. Look at that. It's a Raigeki for the win, and an attack for game. My little Tina goes down and we get an Uguchi. And we did this in one try. Ignore the jump cut here. I tried to A-rank Jono second in free duel and I failed. So we're going to continue on with the story and try our luck later. After saving our game, we take a straightforward stroll to some half-dead elephant carrying a city. Located on its back is Anka Sidin. We nervously ask the intimately frustrated fellow for access to his forbidden ruins. Misinterpreting our instructions, we panic and run away before he tries to do the segs with us. Retreating back, we retire to the palace ruins. We are confronted by one of Jafar's vascular vassals. Guess it's time to duel. Mage Soldier is a shardy level threat at this point in the game. He will only become scary if you leave his monsters out for too long. But if you're stupid enough to do that, he'll end up fusing a twin-headed Thunder Dragon on you, and you're gonna have a bad time. Now, to recap over the earlier jump cut, I couldn't properly pull off an A power rank win against Jono 2. I was successful 1 or 2 times, but it wasn't anything consistent. The monsters in our deck are simply too weak. I kept tipping over to B rank due to the high amount of turns I took, and the large number of equipped cards I needed to beat him. I genuinely think I have a better chance against Haishin instead of Jono 2. That's how bad it is. I'll revisit Free Duel again after I unlock the mages. I think it's best that I try my hand against the Desert Shrine first. If I end up struggling against those two, I'll definitely need to go back and grind, because they are the weakest by far. Speaking of weak, we are now down to our final turn against Mage Soldier. Attacking with our Battleox, we take away the rest of his life points with Hitotsumi Giant and Beaver Warrior. He goes down, and we won a Gorgon Egg, and this took 1 try. Rummaging through our room, we end up finding a map to the Forbidden Ruins. Hooray! Back to the elephant we go. Okay, you creepy individual. Take me to the ruins on this map, please. Gazing at the seal in the sky, our attention gets directed to a golden wall. Awestruck by its shininess, Seto sneaks up behind us. The Dark Soul 3 Dragon Man tells us that we need to seal Haishin away by recollecting all the elements of harmony scattered across Millennium Egypt. Leaving One Piece Land, we re-enter Ponyville and try our hand against the Desert Shrine. Now, why am I tackling the Desert Shrine? Well, aside from it being the weakest mage, if we defeat the Desert Mage with an A rank, he drops Rude Kaiser. That is an 1800 attack Beast Warrior, and that is very good for us. After we tackle this shrine, we're going to try our luck again in Free Duel. Getting an A rank against Desert Mage is going to be much easier in Free Duel, given that all the mages will start off with a field spell on turn 1. I use the term easier loosely. All you're getting is a free attack on turn 1. The rest of the duel is going to be just as horrible as this is. Anywho, 13? I'm going to go with 13. Being walled off by a literal labyrinth wall, we have a trusty Raigeki in our hand to clear the field. Removing the monsters, we attack with Beaver Warrior, with Hitotsumi Giant, and with Battleox. Desert Mage goes down. and we win a sword arm of dragon. Wow, I wish it was that simple for the dinosaur run. Okay, all things aside, we are now onto Martis. Martis is actually almost equal in power to the Desert Mage. The only difference is that his deck has other monsters around 2500 attack. This is to combat you from changing the field on him. And in a colossal slap in the face, the Sogan field ended up working to his advantage. He fused out a Rabid Horseman. Why does he have one of those? I don't frickin' know. So with those shenanigans, it's time for some more trivia. This time we're looking at the card Tiger Axe, a card locked behind the pocket station but still accessible by fusing a warrior and a beast. Tiger Axe debuted in Dark Beginnings 2 and was reprinted later in Legendary Collection 4 and the Millennium Packs. As for its anime appearances, it came on screen in episodes 6, 16, 18 and 133. For its TCG appearances, Tiger Axe appears in the artworks of Wall of Disruption and Parasite Reborn. And that'll do it for the trivia of this card. We're now on to our final turn. Hitting off a Raigeki for the win, we attack with our boosted Beaver Warrior, and we win. Martis goes down, and we got a dragon statue. And regrettably, we did this in 3 duels. Yes, that's right, 3 duels. It has become painstakingly obvious that we need to grind for some stronger cards. So, onto the free duel we go. Despite the A rank in the campaign, I struggled to win a Neko Gal number 2. That itself took 20-ish wins. This meant that I finally got Jono 2 to drop me a Battle Steer, but not his Garuzis unfortunately. As for Desert Mage, I took that many frickin' duels that I could redeem the darn card out of the card password machine, so I did that instead. Not one drop from the guy. After all that, here's our rejigged deck. Just swapped out all the weaker monsters for the stronger, and rejigged a few of the equip cards too to make them compatible. Let's see how we go. Back at Metropolis, it's time to take on the Ocean Shrine. Now, I was getting a little bit worried during Free Duel. I had genuinely contemplated going for an early Megamorph. It thankfully didn't come to that, but man, does this make me nervous for other runs, especially the Reptile and Pyro runs. Don't even get me started on Fairy, I'm also dreading that one. That aside, we now have more monsters in our deck. So you know what that means? That's right, more trivia. This time, we take a look at Battlesteer. Battlesteer debuted in the TCG as part of Metal Raiders and Dark Beginning 2. As for its anime appearances, it appeared in the first episode when Yugi set this card face down as Sagi the Dark Clown began tearing up his field. It was also in Kaiba's Brive briefcase. As for other episodes, it popped up again in episode 16 in the duel between Joey and Kaiba, later again in episode 74 as part of the Battle City montage, and lastly in episode 131 during Kaiba's flashbacks. That's about it. There isn't anything further on this card. But we're down to our final turn. We activate a Raigeki for the win and attack for game. Hooray, we won! And we got a Toadmaster. And this took surprisingly 2 duels. Yes, I lost due to bad RNG in my first duel. He summoned the Twin Head and ran rampant against me. Anywho, 15? We take on Sekmenton. We decide to grass the sea. Wasn't that difficult to do, don't know what Milk Inc was on about. With a nice 500 attack point boost, we should be right. There isn't really much he can throw on the field to defend against us. And I spoke too soon. I forgot that he had a friggin' shield. No matter, we have a Raigeki in our hand, and we easily turn the tide back in our favour. Get it? Because he's the Ocean Mage?
May I advise that you refrain from making any further jokes for the remainder of this duel, if not for longer.
Okay, I'm guessing horrible puns aren't people's forte. No matter, we seem to have reached the final turn of this duel. Powering up our Neko Gal 2, we clear his monster away and attack for game. We win! And it's the Spirit of the Winds. And we did this in 1 try. Remembering that we established the plot line, we claim Sekmenton's Element of Harmony. Sekmenton represents the element of the little bitch, due to the fact that his lower mage put up a bigger fight than he did. We have now satisfied the conditions to take on Seto 2. Unfortunately, I forgot that I had already defeated Martis and went on to challenge the Meadow Shrine instead. On the plus side, if we can defeat this shrine, we are more than certainly able to defeat Seto 2.
LMAO.
Let's see how it goes.
Over.
For the low Meadow Mage, so long as we can hit over 2700, we'll be fine. So with that said, let's head to the trivia. This time we're looking at Rude Kaiser. In Forbidden Memories, Rude Kaiser is the only Beast Warrior card that has a Sun Guardian star. This will be very useful to us later in the game, as Gate Guardian, Metal Zoa, and Black Skull Dragon are all Moon. and having a 500 attack point boost in the final 6 is always a good thing. Sorry, quick pause. I gotta remember to remove the Meadowfield spell. It is actually screwing me up more than it's helping me. I think we're gonna have to continue the trivia in the next duel. We're actually onto our final turn. Our opponent summons nothing of note, and we can finally clear his field and attack the game. Attack 1, and attack 2. Meadow Mage goes down, and we win a Horn Imp. And we did this in one duel. Moving on to Kapura, the strongest of the mages. We are going to be contending with a Gate Guardian and a Black Skull Dragon. We have our work cut out for us, so let's jump into things. We don't draw a strong enough hand, so I'm going to set a Battle Steer in attack mode and hope that he doesn't attack me. And that worked. That is 100% a Gate Guardian or a Black Skull Dragon, so we're going to Raigeki it out of the way and pick up our momentum again. That's a trick you can do, by the way. Oh, there it is. Even though I got destroyed, by setting a card in face down attack position, there is a chance that the AI won't attack for turn 1. I'm uncertain as to the exact mechanics as to why this happens, but I suspect it's part of a turn 1 check the opponent AI makes. It's sort of the same way how they will often go for a Harpy's Feather Duster if you set a spell or trap down on your first turn. Thankfully, we're able to redeem ourselves. I have enough equip cards to get an attack point tied between our Battle Ox and his Black Skull Dragon, so with that said, let's get back to the trivia. For anime appearances, Rude Kaiser is the only monster that Yugi, Kaiba, and Joey have all used at least once in a duel. In episode 1, Yugi used this card against Kaiba. In episode 16, Joey used this card against Kaiba. In episode 26, Kaiba used this card against Pegasus. And if you want to get technical, Mokuba technically summoned this card in the virtual world too. He did it when he entered the graveyard area with Yugi. Getting back to the TCG, Rude Kaiser appeared as part of Legendary Collection 4 and has not been reprinted since. As for the OCG, it was printed much earlier in Booster Pack number 4 and the EX starter boxes. As for its in-card appearances, Rude Kaiser appears in the card artwork of Excess Lesser Linker. If that card sounds familiar to you, that's the same card that Battle Ox appeared in when we went through its trivia. And that's it for the card trivia of Rude Kaiser. I know I sped through it, but we're getting close to our final turn against the High Mage Kampura. And boy oh boy, does this guy love stalling us out. Would have loved to have had a handy Raigeki, but didn't work out that way. Getting back to Forbidden Memories, if we're able to defeat Kapura with a B, C or D rank, there's a chance that he will drop Garuzis, another 1800 attack Beast Warrior, which makes things a heck of a lot easier compared to trying to A rank Jono 2 again. And there we go, our final attack down, Kapura goes down, we get a Mystic Horseman. All this in one try. We obtain another element of harmony. Kapura's represents the elements of the broken scale, or the block fire exit, take your pick on that one. Anywho 16, with 3 mages defeated, we can now initiate the Seto 2 cutscene. Meeting Jono in the duel arena, he informs us that Tina Sparkle has been kidnapped. Theft of livestock in Australia is referred to as duffing, with the perpetrator being the duffer. In other areas like Queensland, the practice is called potty dodging, with a perpetrator known as the potty dodger. I wish I was making this stuff up. Why couldn't they just call it Grand Theft Horse? Oh well, having made our way into the labyrinth, we square off against the labyrinth mage. Knowing what this guy can pull out of his deck, I play a bit defensively and fire off a forest. And boy oh boy, was I freaking right. This guy has decided to hit like a truck for this duel. Normally he will summon either a twin-headed Thunder Dragon or the Gate Guardian pieces. This time he decided to go for the full Gate Guardian. I sound shocked saying this, but from a deck composition perspective, it shouldn't be too surprising. He has a 2.34% chance of having that card in his deck. That's actually the same odds as all those previously mentioned monsters. I just seem to have had decent luck against this guy most of the time. Did you want to know what card he has the highest odds of having in his deck? Stainstorm. Yes, Stainstorm. He has a 5.86% chance to put that card in his deck, and the only real threat that card can take out is Metal Zoa. Guess we'll have fun dealing with this guy during our machine playthrough. But as for our current run...
The hell is that noise? Huh.
Valord coward. Sounds like something got disconnected.
Yeah.
Over.
Well, VT Studio shut down for some reason. Don't know what happened there.
Valord coward. Probably your external hard drive again. Over.
I guess. But it says it's still connected. Technology. Bloody useless. Bloody useless, the whole of
I think we pulled out okay. Boosting up our Neko Gal 2, we attack his last monster with a Battle Steer, and attack again with Neko Gal number 2, and lastly with Rude Kaiser. We win!
Valord coward.
And he dropped the snake hair,
Think your
and we did this
USB
in
port
one
is
go.
giving out.
With that
Over.
fishman out of the way, we navigate through the maze once more. Right.
Maybe. I might go swap it with another port, eh? Oh well. I'll do that if I remember to do that.
Right, left, right. We are eager to put a stop to whatever Jafar is planning. Getting to the main door, we bust in and get immediately distracted. Seto pulls off his best, yeah, it's you, sir, face before realizing that he has
Valord
no
coward.
game. Cultural appropriation
Aren't they
aside,
connected to the motherboard?
Yes, they are. They're all
Over.
connected to the motherboard.
we challenge him to a duel. And thank goodness we did. Sarah is looking a little bit concerned at those noises that came out of my mouth earlier. Oh well. Firing off a precautionary
No, I'll
forest,
wait here.
I'm glad that he only summoned the Blackluster soldier. Drawing into another dead hand, we set
Oh no, wait, is it the fucking camera? Is that what disconnected? Oh no, there we go. Nice. Here, let's go this one. Yeah. Hey guys, remember me? Boy, the eyes look so good. on
Valord
this one.
coward. Yay.
Yay.
Over.
Oh god. Some of the clipping don't look right. Eyebrows were pretty good. Mouth animation is very good though. Fuck, I got such big eyes.
Valord coward. Thank you for listening to my request on the eyes.
I'm
Over.
gonna have to get back to this. Yeah, it smells actually pretty good. It just needs a bit of tweaking. This has actually got a lot of shading and shit on it too. Hang on. Compare it.
Valord coward. I got to be honest, I
Oh,
love the
love
eyes.
this one.
The way they individually blink. Over.
This is an old as fuck model.
Valord coward. Oh hey the old one.
Yeah, buddy.
Over.
The
Valord
mouth
coward.
animation on this one's really good.
Shit, it's been nearly a year already.
Yeah, man. Crazy
Over.
thing about that. The highlights in this are very nice. Eyebrows aren't as good though. Huh. And obviously the physics is amazing.
Valord coward. I think they do the job.
Yeah, buddy.
Over.
But yeah, we're gonna have to fucking...
Valord coward. Like no one really pays attention to the eyebrows. Over.
That's true. Fuck, the eyes are so pretty. We need to fucking fix this one up, eh? Just get the animator highlight. I remember, because I wanted to have it so, you know how you can see the little...
Valord coward.
Hang on.
Hell yeah man.
I don't know if you see how...
Over.
She's got like the stars in her eyes. I remember I wanted to have it so when the expression changed, the shape would change as well. So if I was happy, it turned into a love heart. If I was shocked, it would turn into like exclamation marks. I was gonna keep turning into all these different things. But there's a lot of detail on the eyes. My eyes are so pretty. Ah, the surgery was worth it. Well, it's not like I really have a choice in the matter. I need to get the physics good for the hair. But yeah.